I met a gypsy.
Riana Crehan is in the studio today. We're finally doing the podcast. We've started. We're talking about sleeping statistics.
I'm no good at sleep. Like for me, I've just never been a good sleeper my whole life. It like kills me.
What's the hardest part of sleep for you? I
just can't stay asleep. I can get to sleep, but then I wake up so much. And I'm like a really light sleeper. So any noise, any bit of light, and it's so bad on like race weekends and stuff because I go 3 days when I'm like running off empty. Yeah.
Oh yeah. See, that's not good. So look at this.
Oh yeah, I've seen that on Instagram.
Yeah. So apparently these things are amazing. And for the sleeping stuff, because obviously it's just a ring, so you're not going to feel it.
Yeah.
I was considering getting one of these because we had a MMA dude, Brenton Mumford. He came on the podcast and he got one and he reckoned it's amazing.
I'll
but
have a look.
There's things you can do to tweak your deep sleep and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I like this because you can see I started taking a supplement for sleep when I first got this because I wasn't getting as much deep sleep. Yeah. And then that actually did help and you can sort of see it helping and stuff. Yeah, maybe get the ring.
I'll let you know.
I don't know if it's like a fashion thing, but
I'll come back to you in 6 months' time and let you know.
Yeah, but the sleep, I got the opposite problem with sleep. I can't get to sleep. So for me, it's just I'm the exact opposite. Like to actually get it to the point where my brain shuts down that's the trouble for me. Once I'm asleep, I'm out like a light, and then I can sleep for. I think your body gets used to sleeping 8 hours too, and then you just get into like a routine. I actually was in Bali for February, and I was so used to waking up at 5:30 a.m. every single day for 2 years of COVID because I wasn't traveling. I woke up at every single night at 3:30 a.m. because there's a 2 hour time difference. So
that's what it's like going to Perth. Going to Perth or going to New Zealand, it's just like 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. I'd rather have the 8 hours. I'd rather a full day of jet lag than the 2 or 3 hours. Like it's the worst. The East Coast when you're in America too, where you're constantly doing East Coast to West Coast, it's only a 3 hour swing, but that actually is the worst amount because it's just enough to completely ruin you. It was funny, I said something when we were in Perth the other day for Supercars and we were talking about this exact thing and I said, maybe that's why Murph, like Greg Murphy, was always so grumpy because he was coming from New Zealand and he was sleep deprived all the time. Just threw him under the bus there. But the 3 hours is just it's a nightmare. Yeah,
I feel like that's harder to overcome than the big stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But you've never done the Europe thing you were saying before.
Never been to Europe. I know, I'm so uncultured. It's disgusting. But I don't it's just never been.
It's very hard to get to from Australia.
It is, and I have no excuse because both my parents are English, and so like my sister has a dual passport. She has a British passport and an Australian passport. I could have the same, which would make traveling very easy overseas. But I just have never had an opportunity to go, or there's never been an opportunity for me to like take the time away to go. Actually, in 2020, after Will and I got married, we were like. There was a 5-week break in the season because it was supposed to be for the Olympics. So honeymoon, we'll go over. I was going to try do an Ironman over there in Germany and then we're going to travel and then that'll obviously turn to shit. So I don't know when we'll have that opportunity again.
Well, you're a person that stays very busy in Australia and international travel is a real good way to jack up that program.
Well, and the problem is you're the same. You have your schedules, like Supercar schedule, it runs from, March to December, so the only time you really get is the Christmas time, and then that's always a tricky time over Christmas to be traveling and stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's a thing for when we all retire. Yeah,
and the thing is, the last thing you want to do at the end of the Supercar series is get on another plane or a plane for a way longer time. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know. There'll come a time where we get there.
This will be my first time going to Europe from Australia though.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm not looking forward to that.
Big trip.
Yeah, I think the first flight is 15 hours and then 6 from there.
Just load up the Netflix, mate. Load it up.
Yeah, I don't watch TV, so I have so much shit that I can watch too.
Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be sorted.
What? Any recommendations?
Yellowstone. That's been my best.
Yeah. Everyone's
you haven't seen it? No. Like that is 100% hands down one of my favorite TV shows of recent time. I just think that it's gnarly. It's crazy.
All right, I might have to do that. I've been recommended that show a lot.
Yeah.
So we should start with the motocross side of things, being that we talk to a lot of different motocross people. So you've come from the supercars world, and that media kind of lane. You're also an athlete yourself.
When you try to be an athlete, I didn't call I'm very much an amateur athlete.
Hey, we're the same in that regard. I actually want to spend a bit of time talking about that because I enjoy watching the process you go through with training and stuff like that, because I do a similar thing with jiu-jitsu, and it's like this weird obscure part of your life that is like this punish that you put yourself through, and you don't really get anything out of it in a material sense. But I feel like if that was not in my life, there would be this huge hole, and I just would not even be remotely close to the person I am. So it's like, it's kind of weird to be that invested in a sport, I guess, in the way that we both are.
Yeah, 100%.
From the outside looking in, but when you're on the inside, you're like, nah, there's so much good stuff here. So we can actually, we'll go deep in that as well. But what was, I guess, the experience of doing the Australian motocross series last year? Obviously, it got kind of cut short, but it was a massive step in the right direction for our industry. So I guess what were your impressions of like getting that gig and being involved with, you've obviously been super involved with Supercars, which that's the pinnacle of Australian motorsport. So yeah, I guess what was it like being involved in that kind of world? Yeah,
I mean, obviously it came up out of circumstance. I was moved aside from my role at Supercars in 2020, and an opportunity arose to join the Australian Superbike Championship and the Australian Pro MX Championship. And I hadn't really had much to do, particularly with motocross in my life. Like the superbike side of things was probably a bit more of an easier transition because I knew some of the riders and I'd had been to races, and I sort of knew a couple of the guys quite well through Will. So that wasn't as daunting to arrive and be like, oh shit, okay, now I've got to talk about this. The motocross side of things, like I'd been to a couple of races with Will, and I suppose, you know, he used to be quite into watching, you know, Supercross and AMA and all that sort of stuff. So it's not was totally foreign to me, but I didn't know, you know, at any sort of depth. Feel like an expert. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Not at all. So I basically, when I got the role, just like immersed myself in this motocross life and listened to your pods, like all these different podcasts, and was watching like all this stuff on YouTube. And Will would come upstairs. He's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like in a deep dive on the YouTube, watching the old school motocross and stuff. But I actually really loved working on the sport. The teams were, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but they were like surprisingly really well presented. Like the big trucks, and you know, particularly like Honda and Yamaha, like, you know, their presentation when you arrive at the track was pretty unbelievable. It was really, really cool to see. I mean, all the riders, just, you know, such elite athletes, and they really are athletes. But as I got further involved in it, it annoyed me that they don't get the recognition and the media that they really deserve. And it's just so hardcore. Like, I mean, you know, like these guys, you know, they'd have a crash or there'd be an accident or they've got a broken wrist and they'd had surgery last week, but they're on the bike this week. Or, you know, I remember one race, I don't even know where we were, and Aaron Tanti went down. He literally had like tire marks up the back of his jersey. Yeah. He was all ripped. He had skin hanging out everywhere. And then it's like, oh, it's a back-to-back moto. Like, hop back on, get on, off you go. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? What even are these people? Like, and I think motocross, they'd had a really tough couple of years because of the way that the series sort of, you know, the direction it went, and then obviously with COVID. So I was really hoping that we'd be able to, you know, bring it back to where it deserves to be on a national level and get some money invested and sponsors and that sort of thing. And I think we did a really good job in that first part of the year before the season got cancelled again. It's a real shame that I'm not part of it again this year because I really felt like we were getting some momentum back hopefully that can continue. But yeah, like I've got nothing but positive things to say about the sport and about the riders and the teams. And yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, that, I guess that sort of answers one of the next questions or lanes to kind of go down, is being an athlete yourself.
can you look at these guys and be like, holy shit, you guys are so gnarly.
Yeah, 100%. And most of my career I've been involved in sport in some way. I mean, mostly with motorsport, with the cars, but with triathlon and running and various bits and pieces. And then you look at these guys and girls, I shouldn't discriminate, but they're there, they're like, it's what max heart rate for, 20, 30 minute motos. And then you've got to often do a back-to-back moto, and it's the mental side of things. And, I think what sets moto apart from like racetrack is the racetrack, as much as it can change, like it gets grippier or it gets slippier or things like that, or if the weather, but it's within, it's within a, like the actual direction of the track doesn't change, or like, there's not a random, there's not a random hump that comes on, halfway through the race. Whereas, moto, it's the track's changing every lap or every section of every lap. And that's like the mental capacity that takes up, just to be knowing where you're going, as well as the physical side of things. And then you've also got, 32 blokes or people around you that are also just hammering, and it was pretty mind-blowing just to be right there. I was pretty lucky. You get to be right in the thick of it track, when you're presenting and reporting, and seeing the best Australia has in terms of on two-wheel stuff. So I'm really happy I had that opportunity, and maybe there'll be an opportunity in the future to go back there.
It's gnarly when you're on the track and the guys come past on the big bikes, like the 450s, and you can feel the ground moving as they're braking, and you can feel, and like there's like a vibration that comes off the bikes as well as the sound. And I think that it is if it could get showcased in the right way, there probably is a lot more kind of TV package appeal than
definitely.
What we're showing right now.
Yeah,
right?
I totally agree. And look, I've been in a very privileged position. I've been standing on a grid prior to Bathurst. I've been there, like, you're in the thick of it. But to stand there at the start gate of a moto in MX1 particularly, when you've got the best Australia has to offer lining up, and you're standing there, and it's so I don't even know what the word is, like, because there's nothing polished about it, like it's real raw, and it's dirty, and it's like there's shit everywhere. And I was, couple of times getting sprayed with rocks and sand. I'm like, well, you'll learn that very quickly where to stand. But standing alongside those bikes as the gates drop is probably one of the best experiences you can have, like in terms of at a sporting arena, like just the feeling of what is about to happen, and then seeing what happens, who grabs the whole shot. It's a pretty cool experience.
Have you been to many Supercrosses yet?
No. Oh, years ago in Melbourne, when was it like the what Ryan and Sando were running like
Marvel?
Like years, like I'm talking years ago. We had an opportunity to go, but I think what they're potentially what they're doing in the sort of months to come and the next couple of years is going to be it's going to be cool. I'm really excited for it.
I think that it's cool that you think the Australian motocross has a bigger potential than what it's seen. It's been just on the struggle bus for, I think, probably 2008, 2009, 10. They were probably the prime years in Australia where the series kind of was fairly healthy. Guys were making pretty good money. There was a lot of teams. There was a lot of good rides. The bikes were really good. There was a talent being exported from here. But it's never had the TV package. It's never had the presentation that would kind of make it mainstream. And I think that Australia is such a crazy, fanatical motorsport country, and the V8s is the reason for that. It's kind of, that's been the backbone for years. But it'd definitely be really cool in the future to keep seeing it progressing to the point where it's never going to compete with the V8 supercars, but even if you get half the budgets and half, like if motocross can be half as big as V8 supercars, we'll be doing really well. Yeah, and look, and I think if you're a motorsport fan, like if you like cars, you tend to have an interest in bikes, or vice versa. If you're a bike guy, like you don't mind sitting there and watching cars or Formula One or whatever it may be. Like I think there's a real crossover between all motorsport. You'd be sort of very different if you didn't like any motorsport apart from one particular, So I think that
I think that they've got some good plans in place. Like when I was there last year, that they had a good direction of where they wanted the sport to get to. And look, let's just hope that, it continues on a upward trajectory. And there's some good riders here in Australia, and like just being able to spend a bit of time with them and sort of learn what they've been doing and how they've gone about their craft and what they've done overseas. It's I was in a really cool position.
What do you think that the sport could easily do to like if you've got a magic wand and you from that season, because you're in an interesting position where the inner workings of how the supercars stuff is run from a media perspective. And I think that my position these days is everyone is essentially like a media company first, and then they do V8 supercar races. Yeah. Or I'm a media company that does a podcast, and Sando and Bailey are a media company that runs a supercross. Yeah. That's pretty much how the world is. And I think that the successful brands right now are the ones that think of themselves in that way. So you being so entrenched in media, you've got like a unique perspective on that. What would you do with the magic wand, do you think?
I mean, it always comes down to money, but I think there's little things that you can do. Like, I look at, it's funny, like motocross guys more than any other motorsport are like social media. Like they got big presence on social media. Like YouTube is big in motocross, which I was like, okay, I didn't realize how big these dudes are. Like they're, making YouTube all the time. And so I think that it doesn't take any money to lift a presence on socials. And like, like that that's just easy stuff, like pull stuff from the guys that are, someone's doing a YouTube, like ask if you can have a highlights clip and stick that on the, main social media platforms of motocross. Like I think that there's small things that can be done that literally cost zero money, or maybe it's a person that just needs to do the logistics side of that. And look, I think some of the challenges we had last year were, some of the tracks are pretty grassroots, and it is hard to host a national championship, top level championship at a track that may be lacking of facilities and things like that. And not just like we had big crowds at all the tracks, but it's like, okay, well, we've got to look at where the investment's going at a grassroots level in order for it to feed through to the top. And that's like really basic things like toilet facilities and canteens and that sort of stuff. And I know motocross is kind of raw and a bit dirty and all that sort of stuff, but
that's not how it should stay.
But I think if you're putting a national championship on, then certain things have to be, elevated level, to that level. But that obviously, it all comes down to like everyone working together, the tracks working with the promoters and the promoters working with the television and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think there's a huge amount of things that need to be done just to lift it just a really small level. Yeah,
and we've got, it's one of my pet peeves with the championship, and it's probably a bit different with the old promoter, with Kevin Williams. Like there's a lot of dealings with tracks, and then there's tracks that go there and then they're not happy with how things have been done before, so then they will say that we'll never run an event while you're the guy promoting it. So there was a lot of that, so we end up going to these tracks that are shit, like they're 65 tracks, and a lot of the best tracks are just completely off the calendar. So for me, I think you're exactly right, but there is the facilities there. We're just not using. They're just not even in the conversation for getting a national. But did you see the Gun Valley track this year? Did you watch the highlights from that?
Yeah, we didn't go there. Yeah, that was new this year. We didn't go there last year.
Yeah, so that's the perfect example. And the TV package that they put together from that was epic. Yeah, that really looked like great Australian racing. I would be happy and proud as like an international person within the industry to go, this is from my city, this is from my hometown, and I'd be proud to put that up against a Budds Creek or a Red Bud or one of those kind of flagship US facilities, or one of the big European
look, I think
tracks.
Like the first event we did was Wonthaggi in 2021, and that was my first event, and look, like considering how the championship had been in the last couple of years, and we rocked up there, and like, look, it was presented fantastic. Like it was beautiful, all the trucks on display alongside the the front of the track. And I mean, apart from the weather being like literally -10, but it was like I was really pleasantly surprised at how well the track was presented and what that event looked like. And we can be really proud that we put that event together with, a brand new team, a brand new television, a brand new promoter and all that stuff. And that was, we came away from that thinking, well, if this is where we're starting from, we can really like take it to the next level. But that's, then you sort of went to a few other tracks and you're like, oh, okay, we're really going to have to like, take particular camera angles and things like that to really like, lift this and make it on, a level that it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I feel like that's probably not a crazy hard problem for us to solve as an industry if we do kind of get together and maybe we've got to start by saying this is the national venues that we're going to for the next, we'll commit to X amount of years and then there's X amount of money that's got to go into the track and then it's got to be built by this specific company. There's a guy, Pro Tracks in Australia, that does amazing work. So I think that's probably, and then you go, this is the plan for year 1. This is the plan for year 2. This is the plan for year 3. And then maybe after a few years, you go, all right, we're going to pull this track out, but then there's going to be another event, like a standalone event that we do. And then you can sort of slowly over the next 10 years build out some really great facilities. I agree with you. And look,
you don't want to sort of give them too much of a hard time because it has been such a rough couple of years for them. Sure. And then not having a full championship last year was really tough. But I think it's about, look, let's get a really solid year in this year. Like, let's just get the season done. Like, we'll like make sure that we attend every single event that we've said that we're going to attend. Get the year under our belt and be like, okay, we've had a really good 18 months under our belt. Now we need to commit to, okay, for the next 2 years, we're definitely going to do 6 events or 8 events, and it's going to be, like Queensland, Victoria here. That, you know what I mean? Like, you just really need to commit to something that people can look to the future and go, okay, well, in 5 years' time, if I'm doing, juniors now, like, where does my future look? Because at the moment, there's probably kids going, okay, well, I don't know where my future is going to look like. Is it going to be in Australia? Do I need to leave, ASAP to get over, to Europe or get it to America, whatever it may be? I think that the pathway probably is a little bit sketchy at the moment.
And if you're a parent that's investing all this time and money, the amount of money that you have to invest to be a professional supercross and motocross rider from your parents to get you to that level is insane. And then if you're a parent that has the ability to invest that money, then you've probably made some money and you're probably pretty smart and know what it takes to make money. And as you said, if there's no pathway, if there's no future that is clear and visible, then what's to say that those parents would invest in those kids or spend that money here? What
I was really impressed by was like the guys at Beaton's, like Beaton, he has Beaton's Formula, and like the program that those guys are on, and there's probably, I think there's like 10 or 12 of them now that are part of his program. Like, that was super impressive to see that there's a whole program of whether it's nutrition, whether it's fitness, it's physical, it's days on the bike, it's this, that. Like, I was, I've never really seen that in, like, I mean, there's probably a guy that does a bit of stuff like that in Supercars from a personal training point of view, but I haven't really seen a whole program where it's like all encompassed, all in the one. Whole thing, like, here's your package, like, come join us and we'll basically get you direct your career type thing. So I was like super impressed with that. And
the results that those guys have had over the last couple of years too. And then Kyle Webster this year was just incredible until he got hurt.
Yeah, which is shattering.
I'm a massive Kyle Webster fan. I think he's one of the best and nicest people 100%. I've ever met in my life. There's not many people that are better as a person than him. I didn't think he'd do this good. If there's anyone that I want to do good, it would be him. I did not think he was going to be that good on a 450
it's pretty devastating for him to have the injury. Like, he's from Perth, so I feel like people from Perth always like click. Like, you're just you're from Perth? Yeah, I'm from Perth. Okay. Like, people from Perth, we all just hang out together. And and like like you said, the nicest guy, really beautiful family, like, just very polite and doesn't. Like, he's like, you don't want to have a stereotypical like motocross rider, but I don't think he's your stereotypical motocross rider. Like, he's so well spoken. He's got the vegan thing going on. Like, just a really polite kind of guy, and then just gets on the bike and is just a total animal, and it's just crazy. Yeah. But like, I'm shattered for him, and hopefully things will be able to get back on track pretty soon.
But it speaks to the success of the Beaton program.
And Regan as well. Like, I mean, like he's just such a friggin' mad dog. Like, I have so much time for that kid.
Perth boy.
Perth kid again.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, like all the guys that were sort of leading the championships were all coming out of the Beatons formula.
Did you have any intel on if they're going to go to WA in the next few years?
I don't know.
That's another very big disappointment for me, because some of the best tracks in Australia are in WA.
Yeah.
And
huge motocross family in WA.
How do you call it a national championship? It's an East Coast championship is what it is. And I don't think that is cool. I think that you've got a lot of people in WA that pay their Motorcycling Australia entry fees and their insurances for their licensing, and for them to be not represented. I know that it's a logistical thing, but last year we drove there.
Yeah.
And we did a race.
Look, that's sort of what I was saying before. Like, you'd like to think that like we can get a whole year under our belt this year, so that we can say, okay, we've had 18 months, nearly 2 years of a pretty solid championship, with pretty good sponsorship packages, you know, from a series point of view, and decent television. So, you know, what does the next 2 years look like? And that needs to include, you know, other locations as well.
Yeah. I think there's a way to do it as well, because the travel's the big thing, and the semis. But I mean, I don't know, maybe you've got a different opinion. I don't know that semis are super necessary at every single race.
Yeah, and maybe it's not, or maybe it's like, in order to get a race in WA, it's like a collaboration between the teams that say, you know, we're only going to take, like, look, let's go in together. Yeah. Like, we'll only take 2 as opposed to taking 4, like, you know, trucks or whatever it may be, and try do it that way. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the logistics of how each team needs to work, but maybe there needs to be a bit more.
One semi-trailer for 4 bikes is probably not the move when it comes to, and that's how they kind of run it.
And I suppose that's maybe something that needs to be looked at from a series point of view. That is a way that, you know, they can make it happen and get the top guys there.
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple of options in my head. Is you either you do take all the semis, you take the whole show there, but it stays there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, or then do a back-to-back weekend.
Yeah, and you're doing. I think that we did a ride day. It's actually the track where Regan got hurt. Mm-hmm. It's Bunbury. Brilliant. Like, that's a brilliant track, a brilliant facility. The club's amazing. The people that run the club. We did a ride day there last year. We announced it a couple of days before, we had 130 riders show up.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
It's a crazy strong community there. The track's insane. So you could do, and then I think Manjimup should have a national as well. I don't know if it takes away from they've got the Manjimup 15,000. But I don't know if it takes away from that, how you work that. Yeah. Or do you have Manjimup, which is the first weekend of June, and then that's just Manjimup, and then have one off the back of that. Yeah. Exactly. So you're kind of staying there, and then do you go from there to Darwin, and there's a national there, and then you do one in North Queensland, and so I don't know, maybe there's a way to do it, or you commit to just taking all the semis, all the tools, like almost a flyaway round, and then building some scaffolding and having pits, like a box set up, as opposed to, because you don't have the semis at Supercross at New Zealand, and I actually think it's better for the event, because all the riders are mingling together, because everyone's in a pit, like in the open. It creates a really unique atmosphere where everyone's forced to be around each other, and then it makes it really compact for the fans too, so that you can kind of anyway, I think there's a bunch of things that can be done, but it's cool that, like you said, there are some steps sort of being made, you know. I mean, look, we won't solve all the issues here today, but I think that I think they've made a really big leap to get where they are now, and it's about looking what, you know, the next sort of 5 years is going to look like. And can you see it being a lot bigger than it is, or, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. I think it deserves to be bigger than what it is, but, you know, I think it just comes down to the last probably 4 or 5 years. I mean, you know better than I do that it's kind of not had a direction, you know what I mean? And now it's kind of got a direction. And look, I had a couple of the V8 guys come to, God, where were we last year? I can't think where we were. And like got them down into the pit area during you know, MX1, and they were like eyes wide open, just going like, this is friggin' cool. Like, this is a really, really cool event. And And I think it is because you don't want to lose that grassroots of like the access, like, and that's what fans love at motocross. They have cool access. They can get right up against the fence and really get like a pretty awesome spectating point of view. But you also need to, have it at a level that's of a national, championship as opposed to just like a, amateur grassroots event.
Yeah. Do you think that it would be the kind of thing, well, I think a really cool way to do it would be to have someone like Seven come on board, and because it's SBS now, right?
SBS, and it's gone to Stan this year.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was Fox Sports and SBS previously, and now it's SBS and Stan Sport.
And so who does the V8s? Is it Seven?
Seven and Fox, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that if there's some way that it can be kind of on the same sort of platform, and then you could kind of leverage each of the you know the championships off each other, and I think it should be the same with ASBK, because I think that's probably one of the coolest things that the internet allows for that, is for people to your digital personality, like a Todd Waters and then a Chaz Mostert or whoever, they can kind of coexist in that space.
That's what we saw last year with ASBK at the Darwin event, because we had ASBK at the Supercars Darwin event, and then they had drag racing at night, and it really was just like a cool event because ASBK got to be on the big stage with Supercars, and they got all that extra exposure, plus we had all the sort of interchangeable things where we had Lounsey taking getting a 2-up ride on Crew Halliday, and then we had Josh Waters, he went for a hot lap with Cam Waters. Like, it was all that sort of stuff where you can do all that sort of stuff because you're all on the same card, and you can really cross promote between all and there's sponsors that are cross promoting. I mean, like, look at Penrite, they're in all of them, like so it works because you've got all that. So, and look, there was talk last year that they were going to have a pretty big motorsport event, which was going to be a collaboration between motocross and ASBK and potentially Supercars. And look, if that was on the cards in the future, that would be awesome. It's just finding the right location, and Darwin is a cool location for that because it's sort of small town vibe, but also has the track that's that can work for both of them, but it also has to work for each championship. Like, you can't have one being the hero and then these guys just getting treated as poor cousins. Like, they all need to be heroes at the same event type thing. But
I think that cross promotion is probably the way that we can really, because I feel like there's just a sort of social proof. Oh, this guy's hanging out with this guy, so they're on a similar level. And I think that was one of the cool things. I think that's what the Lawrence boys are really doing for Supercross right now, is they're bridging the gaps between the sports. So you've got F1, MotoGP, or like Supercross, and Supercross has always been way down here, and F1 and MotoGP, they've always been kind of they're so far out of that league. But then when you see Jet giving Marquez a donut and Marquez is on the podium, it's like social proof. Our guys are the same as here. And I think that that's such a great strategy for any sport to use that wants to elevate their profile, because I think the profile of sport is only as good as the profile of the athletes.
100%. And look, I think nowadays more than ever, like, I look at Formula One and, you see like Danny Rick and you see Lewis, and like they are themselves the heroes now. It's not the team. It's not even the car. Like, it's like they are the heroes. Like,
you'll follow a driver from team to team.
And you'll see, like, even on the weekend in Miami, like, I mean, you see the images of like Lewis and Danny rocking in.
Can you go find we need some walk-ins of
and,
those.
You and it's like, right? And I was like, so what did I put on my Instagram that like
Lewis's hot pink one?
Miami Lewis is the best Lewis, like, because he just absolutely just went to town with it.
There was a sick jacket combo. He rocked up with a no shirt.
I think that was like the Saturday. Because Sunday he had the full pink outfit. But like, that's the kind of stuff. Like, I love Lewis. I mean, people slam him, people hate it, but
I'm not the biggest fan, eh?
Look,
I'm team Danny Rick though, so it's pretty hard for me to. But Lewis, I don't know.
I mean,
I
get why people don't like him, but I just feel like what he has done for Formula One, like his reach beyond motorsport, is something we just have never ever seen before. Like, he had Michelle Obama for bloody hell, like in his pit garage over the weekend in Miami. Like he's there at Met Gala. He's there on the front row of, Fashion Week. Like he's got, he's there like with Beyonce and Jay-Z. Like he's crossing, he's crossing so many different avenues of pop culture. And I think like what he's done for motorsport in other areas is like, we've never ever seen it.
I completely agree.
I mean, like,
I'm not the biggest fan, but I completely agree.
Like, I can't even.
That is pretty dope.
It's the best. I freaking love it so much. But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, people follow them because, and it's the same in NBA. People follow players because they rock in and you got the chains or they got the shoes on or like the cool outfits, and I'm like, kids see that and they're like, oh man, that is like, I need to get those shoes or I need to have that hat or whatever it may be. And I think that if you're an athlete and you're not playing to that, you're missing the boat. Like you're so missing the boat.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, they're really, Lewis does do it so good, and he does bend so many genres. He is a modern day rock star.
Yeah, 100%.
And there's not many. You are right. You're looking at a LeBron type of guy, or like who is probably like a Durant, like a Kevin Durant. Yeah. Like they're like these. They're almost bigger than the sport. In a way.
And he is bigger. Like people will hate me saying this, but I think he is bigger than the sport because he's crossed into so many different genres of pop culture and society through what he's been doing. And look, you may hate him for what he says and his attitude, but
that's the bit what I don't like. I just feel there's just like weirdness with his attitude about certain things, and I'm just like, come on, I don't know. But he is a spectacular athlete. To win the amount of races that he's won and to do what he's done in the most competitive sport, I think that it's just insane. I think it's hard though when you look at, let's say, a Tiger Woods or a LeBron James, Michael Jordan, any of those, because that's the level that he is. I just don't know if drivers get that same respect though, because they're a part of a team and a car, and so it's always a two-part conversation. It's always Lewis in the best car. Is he in the best car? Would he win if he was in this? So I think that's probably where some of that, or that's the leg people have to stand on, I guess.
But you need, look, in motorsport you need both. You need to be the best
100%.
driver in the best car in the best team, and people can say, well, maybe he wouldn't have won all that if he wasn't in that car, but he would have found that car because the best athletes find the best environment for themselves. So whether yes, and there's always going to be sliding doors moments, and there's always going to be like, oh, okay, well, he was there at the right time because that's when they took off and all that sort of stuff. But the best athletes find themselves in the best environment and the best situations, 100%. And whether that be the car, the team, the mechanic, the engineer, his bloody physio, Angela, whatever, like people. And it's the same in supercars, and it will be the same in most sports. Like the only sort of anomaly maybe is like an AFL where there are arguably the best players who won't win a premiership because they're not in the best team at the time, and that's probably a bit of a anomaly in that sense. But I think in a motorsport sense, like the best will find the best because that's how it works.
You're so right, and I seriously think that all of the things that you would kind of, I guess, could work against a person like Lewis. You go, oh, he's lucky to be in this, he's lucky to be in that. I think that when you really break down luck, though, there's all these different versions of luck, and there is a version of luck that you end up manufacturing for yourself.
100%.
And you just trace that line all the way back to the very beginning of your life. And there is just this slow compound interest of good luck that you can create in your own life. That is exactly what you said, leads to you being in the best car, in the best era, whatever. You got the best sponsors. It's almost a recipe for success where you can't lose. And then that's where people will, to kind of go against your point, but it's like, he is lucky, but this is this manufacturing of luck from a 4-year-old kid in a go-kart, and what you're seeing is the result of like compound interest in a sense.
100%. And like you have that conversation all the time in motorsport, whether it be Formula One or or supercars, because people say, oh well, he, I suppose use an example like Jamie Whincup, like, because he's our best, he's our greatest, and people say, well, maybe he was in the best car, but but he was in the best car because he deserved an opportunity because he was the best at the time, and then continued, and what he did with that team over time as it evolved,
and the human that he is to keep that drive,
exactly.
and to never get laid off when times got tough or whatever.
And that's what I think, if you haven't been around sport in some way, whether it be yourself as an athlete or working in media or as a sponsorship manager, like whatever it may be, if you haven't been around sport, it is difficult to understand what it takes to stay at the top level for many years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years or whatever it may be. Like Jamie, for example, staying at the absolute top of his game with the absolute most pressure on himself from external pressure, social media pressure, all that sort of stuff.
Life.
And then juggle that with everything else that's going on, and to stay at that pinnacle level of an elite athlete over a 10-year, 12-year, 15-year career is insanely hard. And yes, they do get, paid well, and they get, they live in a nice house and all that stuff, but like it's all relative.
Yeah, more money, more problems.
Yeah, it's all totally. But it's all relative to that situation, like. And I've been in a fortunate position that I've been around athletes through my job, and then obviously through Will, my husband, and it is insanely hard to stay and maintain mental and physical and emotional discipline and success for an extended period of time.
But you're right, J-Dub is a gnarly dude. I know J-Dub in a way more casual sense of mountain biking with him, having some beers. I'm haven't really been around the J-Dub at the office that much, and when you frame it like that, the position that dude's been in for so long, how was he just the coolest, cruisiest guy through all that as well? Because you actually, the dude might as well just be a guy that owns a car wash.
But I think, I think he has a really an incredible ability to switch between, each of his personas, and I know him as a mate and someone I've known for a very long time, and Will, myself and Jamie all used to live together, and when we were sort of just like kids, but once he's in race face mode, it's like he's an animal, and he's ruthless, and it's just eyes forward to what he needs to be, like the focus and all that sort of stuff, and him and Will have had some times throughout their friendship when it's gotten a bit spicy, because like they're both fiercely, competitive in their own way, and like,
J-Dub didn't give a fuck. He used to do some gnarly shit,
and ruthless. But I think that most athletes that are at the top of their game, like he has been, has an element of that in their personality. Like it's very rare, I suppose, like a Kyle Webster who can just be this like super polite guy, but I don't know Kyle in like any other way than that way. So, but yeah, most athletes that are at the absolute pinnacle have that ruthless, cutthroat, will do anything to win type,
mentality. Yeah. Man, what are we thinking about I love the fashion. I wonder where it comes from in Lewis though, while we're on the topic of Lewis. Because he takes some big fashion risks. Like
you need the one from today, the full pink like shirt, shoes. He had like purple sunnies.
They were the full oversized shoes.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Can you go on his story?
Yeah, see what
he'll be on there for sure.
He takes it's. I don't even know if it's a risk. Like you can kind of pull whatever,
but it just makes a statement, like how on the weekend there's the pink.
Bang, focus in pink.
It's so good.
Yeah, because there's.
I mean, how good's that picture though? Like of David Beckham, Tom Brady.
That's so hectic.
Like seriously,
that's the
what
level
a
he's
photo.
On. Yeah,
what
that's
a photo.
the level he's on.
So cool.
There's a few goats there, huh?
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah, no, I will agree with every single point that you made about Lewis. So me not liking him is not in disagreement with any point that you made, down to the fashion, down to everything. There's just something about him. I'm just like, ugh. But then I've thought about it. I definitely would like to do the podcast with him. And then this is what I always have, well, what I've learned from doing this. If you genuinely just talk to someone for 3 hours, you'll find it very hard not to like that person.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm sitting here saying, I'm like, nah. But then I know that if I spoke to him, I'd be like, he's the best guy in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of...
No, I'd love to be able to do an interview with him. Jesse Yates has done a couple, like when it's F1 Grand Prix time.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would be a pretty big bucket list to be able to do an interview.
What's your favourite interview you've ever done? Or like, what's the biggest, best interview?
I get asked this a bit and I don't have a good answer for it. Like in terms of an experience.
There it is. Well, I wonder what brand it is.
Oh, it's so good. In terms of an experience, when I did when Craig Lowndes and Stephen Richards won Bathurst, and what year are we, like 2015 maybe? Yeah, 2015. And the crowd, you know how everyone sort of fans run onto the track and like they're all surrounding the car, and myself, Craig and Richo all sat on the car, and the noise from the crowd, I've never in my life experienced like such deafening chants, and I couldn't hear anything. I could barely hear what they were saying to me. So from like an experience type thing, and I was pretty young still in my career, like that was next level. Like that was amazing. I suppose from a more personal level, when Will won Bathurst in 2016, I again got to do the winners
that was
interview.
Pretty dope, yeah.
And I suppose at the time I didn't really think about it so much because you're so in the moment. But like in reflection, years gone by, I think like, wow, like what an amazing opportunity for us. Like he's won Bathurst, which is the pinnacle of what we have here in Australia, and I got to be the person that did the winners interview. And like as a couple, I don't know how many other couples would be in a similar situation to have such a cool experience together and have that as a memory and have those photos. And so, you know, those two for me.
Is it on YouTube or on your Instagram or anything?
It'd be somewhere. Yeah, it'd be
Try
to
find that, Rose. That'd be pretty. I actually remember it. I remember watching it.
But it was such a controversial finish because that was the finish where, you know, McLaughlin, J-Dub, Tan, like they all crashed, and then Will was technically second on the road, but then J-Dub got the penalty, so he obviously that's why they won. So it was like, you know, there was a lot going on, and it was in a time of Will's career when he had been at Techno for a couple of years, and it'd been a pretty difficult, you know, couple of years in his career, and was with a team that wasn't necessarily like a favourite to win or anything like that. So it was kind of like all of that together, and then it was just like, holy shit, like this is happening, like I cannot believe it. And so for me personally, that's a pretty special interview. I've done like a couple of cool ones, like with the Madden brothers. They came out to the Gold Coast 600. God, that was really young when they came out. Got to interview them. Like there's been a few.
They're nice dudes too,
super nice dudes. It came up as a memory actually on my Facebook, and I was like, wow, I look like a child, and they both look really young. But stuff like that, which, you know, I suppose at the time you're like, oh, this is cool, but then you think back, you're like, yeah, that is cool. Like, you know, getting to speak to people like that. Who else was there? Did we have Solange Knowles once at the Gold Coast event as well? She was amazing. Like, so I've been in a position where I've, you know, got to speak to some pretty cool people and been there for some pretty cool moments. Yeah.
I think there's a funny contrast, or like a bit of a paradox though, that if you're the kind of person that can really excel doing an interview with somebody in that big of a moment, you have to be a person that kind of cannot give a fuck.
Yeah.
So it's not, doesn't play into, I guess, soaking in and like appreciating the moment as much, because to do that job, you have to be bigger than that moment in your own self,
totally.
in a way.
And it is that, like, especially for this, like,
was that it there?
It was hard because, you know, that's my husband who's just won Bathurst. So obviously the natural reaction is just
freak out.
Freaking go nuts. But yeah, I'm like in a role where I need to be professional and like keep my shit together.
Yeah.
But then it's been the flip side as well. Like when Will had a big accident at Tassie in 2017, like I don't know if you remember, it was raining and there was literally like the biggest pile up. There would have been 12, 14 cars crashed, and Will was part of it. And he ended up fracturing a bone in his back from the accident. And I could see, like, you know, we were watching it obviously in the garages, and I could see he was on the floor on the side of the track, and I'm asking, like, is he okay? Is he okay? And then you know, time went on, and sort of the next minute he's off on an ambulance leaving the track, and I'm still there.
Stay there.
Still there, having to finish off, you know, the day. And like that was a pretty tough time. Even though I knew he was relatively okay, the sight of seeing him leave the track in an ambulance after like one of the biggest accidents we've seen, you know, at Tassie, was like really hard. And then, you know, I had to quickly rush off and get to the hospital, and then we were at the hospital all night, and then, you know, go back to work on the Sunday the next day and act as if it's all good, and knowing that he's, you know, in a hospital around the corner and getting x-rays on his back and, you know, stuff like that. So there's also those moments as well where it's, you know, the other way, like it's the real, you know, worry and having to keep my brain switched on to and focused to what I'm doing, as opposed to having to, you know, normally you'd just be sitting bedside with him at the hospital type thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is this it, right? Is this it?
I don't know if they would have the...
Wonder. Yeah, I can imagine that'd be such a crazy feeling though, to see. I mean, it'd be hard to even know what that perspective is. Like, who do you see in that moment? Do you see Will the driver? Do you see Will the husband?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. He's such a legend.
But it's so weird. Like I've not spoken to him. Like he gets out of the car and I'm like, so you won.
How was it?
It's such a weird experience.
That is, huh?
That's his mum and stepmom.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's so good, eh?
I haven't seen this for so long.
Really?
Yeah. And do you know what made this really special? So the young, oh, you can't see. There's a young kid there, Flynn Porter, and it was... Sorry, this is probably a story you may not know. So Mark Porter was killed at Bathurst in 2006, who was good friends with us. And his wife, so the kid there with like a flat peak cap, that's his son, Flynn.
Oh.
And he'd never been to Bathurst, and it was the 10-year anniversary. So he came that year in 2016. And Will and Mark were friends, and we're, you know, I'm best friends with Mark's wife, Adrian. And to have Flynn there that year, it was just this weird, like... I don't know, like a weird, aura about the fact that Flynn was there, and it was the anniversary of Mark's death, and then Will won, and it was just, I don't know, it's kind of like, you know, sometimes things just happen and there's no real explanation for it, and that was kind of one of those days where, you know, Flynn was with us on the grid, and it was his first time being at Bathurst and, you know, sort of being involved in car racing, and then for Will to win with Flynn there, it was sort of... Yeah, it was a cool moment.
Yeah, that's a crazy experience to go through. Especially... It's cool seeing it too, you know, that you're a part of that win too. Yeah. That's probably what makes that a little bit weird, because you're doing the interview from the perspective of a complete outsider that's got nothing to do with it, whereas you are actually in the trenches day in and day out, and a part of that victory in a sense too. So you're sort of interviewing you're not a part of it. Yeah,
exactly. And that's like, I suppose that's the thing. You still got a professional face, and you just got to ask the questions that you're supposed to. Yeah, as opposed to just like, oh my God, you won.
Yeah. Oh, it's still cool. So when did the media thing start for you? Like, what was your pathway to get into this world?
So I grew up in Perth, and my background was dancing. So from a little kid, I did dancing, like performing arts, drama, like musical and theatre, all that sort of stuff, and did it pretty seriously. So I was like, every night after school I'd be at the dancing studio all day on the weekends, and then every school holidays we'd have dancing competitions, and that kind of developed into other things like doing proper performances. And then I worked as a professional dancer for a long time when I was like sort of from a teen up until when I left Perth in like my early 20s. And I always just wanted to be involved in the entertainment industry. Like I always saw myself, whether that be, you know, singing, dancing, acting, like, I don't know. I didn't really know what the end thing looked like, but I knew that I wanted to be on the stage in some way.
Yeah.
And then I'd done some like TV commercials and things like that in Perth. And there used to be this, I don't even know what the show was called, but it was like a panel show that was on a community TV channel that I'd done a couple of times when I was pretty young. And then the way I got into supercars was my mum saw a little ad in the newspaper for the Miss V8 supercar competition.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, oh, you should enter this and see how you go. And I was like 18, I think, at the time. And so entered, won that, went to the grand final and then won that. And then the following year, I was the Miss V8 supercar.
Ah, okay.
So I spent a year traveling with the V8s, like doing kind of the things that they did, like autograph sessions and radio interviews and rah-de-rah-de-rah. And they had an internet show, like it was called Big Pond Panel Beaters, and it was like a little show they did on a Friday night of a race meeting, and I sort of did a couple of little spots on there. And so when that year finished, I just basically said I wanted to be involved in the media somehow. Like, is there a chance I can do work experience, or you know, what can that look like? And yeah, they basically said, okay, the next year if you can get yourself to some of the events, like you can like I didn't get paid, and they just said, like, if you can get yourself there, like we'll give you an opportunity to do some stuff on like what used to be the big screen, like just the, you know, the coverage at the track. And that's really where it started.
That's cool. That's different to what I thought.
So I didn't have any motorsport background at all. Like I didn't grow up in a family that had a motorsport interest. Like we were a family, like we enjoyed AFL and like, but most of our stuff was like dancing. Like that's all I ever did. And yeah, I just sort of got thrown in the deep end when I first got to a supercar event, and I remember the guy gave me a microphone, and then there was this cameraman, and the cameraman, I'm like, what do you normally do? He's like, oh, I shoot weddings. I was like, okay, sweet. What a team we are. And then off we went and like just did like, you know, color stories, like things like that with the fans and the merchandise area and that sort of stuff. And that's kind of where it started. Yeah,
that's straight ground floor.
Yeah.
And people probably thinking that you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and totally. And that's where like those first few years for me were pretty hard.
That would have been tough.
Yeah, because I'd come from this pageant, you know, parade sort of model girl, and I had long blonde hair, and I was only 19, so I was young, like a young girl, like stepping into this industry that I had no prior knowledge of, and then, you know, doing this TV stuff, and which I again didn't really have any skills. Like I'd done a couple of things, but certainly nothing to the level that I, you know, needed to be at. And it was just learn on the job, and it was kind of just sink or swim. And you know, I suppose, yeah, like that maybe some people wouldn't have survived that because it was pretty rough. Like some of the comments that I used to get on Facebook and stuff were pretty hard. Yeah, and even like on, you know, at the tracks, and people would say, you know, I was only there because I was with a driver, because Will and I had started dating by that point, and you know, I'm only there because of, you know, what I look like, and like just all, and then just like really
standard shit.
Yeah, and then just like some of the comments were pretty brutal, and I think a lot of people like would have struggled to deal with that. But yeah, like I worked full time during the week, and had a couple, like still did some other, you know, bits and pieces on the side, and then would get myself to a supercar event and work the weekend, and basically did that for a couple of years before I really got a job, so to speak, like where I was getting paid. And not that I was getting paid much money, but it sort of looked like there was, I don't know,
light at the end of the tunnel,
it was kind of going somewhere. And really that kind of just like, you know, as the years went on, like I got more opportunities and got to do more things and got to do more events, and the big screen coverage got bigger in terms of like there was more money invested into it, and we had an actual producer, and we had a proper like we had a proper team that started to build, and it wasn't just sort of like me and some shonky cameraman going to like record stories. So yeah, and then, you know, as the years went on, like they used to do shows called V8 Extra, which was like a magazine show that they used to air on like Saturday afternoon or something like that. And, you know, got a couple of opportunities to shoot like a color story for that. So it was like, okay, wow, now I'm on the actual TV, you know, now I'm on the coverage. And then I think it was 2014 so basically when I was doing the big screen, I was kind of like a jack of all trades. I did the color stories, I'd do the pit lane, I'd do some commentary, like I'd help with, you know, editing stories. Like I was kind of like doing it and I'm glad I did, because it gave me
100%.
It gave me experience. It gave me an insight into what was required to put this stuff to air. We were a really small team.
You do seem, even when we were talking about the motocross stuff, that's why I went a bit deeper into the production side of things, because you really do seem like you understand the production world on a different level. There's not a lot of people that are, I guess, just presenters that have a real deep understanding of the whole process.
And I think that's, I'm grateful that I was, like, even though it was hard at the time and I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, I'm grateful I had that as a learning experience and got to see it from the other side. And I used, it was like asking lots of questions and how does this work, and always wanting to learn more. And then, I think it was like 2014 that I remember Scott Young, who was the boss at the time, got me in for a meeting and was like, okay, we're going to bring you into the Channel 7 telecast. And I feel like it was Sandown or something. It was like middle of the year. And I'm like, oh, like on the TV. And he's like, yeah, we're going to bring you in for pit lane, like for the Channel 7. So you're going to be with, Beretta and
that's crazy.
And who was there at the time? Beretta, Larko. It might have been Daniel Gibson as well. Can't think. But like, and I was shitting myself. I was absolutely terrified about joining, not only like being on TV properly, on live TV,
with those people,
but then with these guys, who are such experts in their field. And I was probably terrible. Like, I can't imagine I was any good at all. But I was really lucky. I had like Scott Young, who was our boss at the time. He was a really big supporter of mine and was always like encouraging. And I just felt like I had someone who had my back, like even though if I stuffed up or, I was getting slammed online, like I felt like I had people that had my back and were like, no, you deserve this place and you've done the work and that sort of thing. And that was so important.
People probably don't understand how hard it is to put yourself out there in that role and then be at the mercy of fans' feedback. And then you've got to show up and do it again. Yeah. It sort of isn't athlete's pursuit in a way that every week you can go and perform and be judged, and then you've got to show back up and perform again the next week.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it was just so daunting for me because I was this young girl who didn't have a lot of experience, who walked into this production room and you look around and there's, Mark Beretta and there's Mark Scaife and there's Neil Crompton and there's like Tom Williams was working with us at the time and, Larko, like, and there's all these people who are at the top of their game, from, whether it be racing or from television. And I was just sitting there looking around.
And they have like legitimate reason to be
exactly.
there.
And I'm sitting around going, well, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And then, at the time, I suppose Instagram wasn't as sort of strong as what it is now, fortunately, but Facebook was, all over it and like some of the comments I used to read, and then like you said, you've got to rock back up, a couple of weeks later and do the same thing again, and it's playing on your mind. Okay, well, don't say that because you sound like a dickhead last time, but make you say like this and that took a while for me to really feel comfortable. And look, I'm still don't, still now, and I'm like, 15 years later, like I still don't finish the day and be like, oh, okay, God, what
killed
stupid,
it.
What stupid thing did I say today?
Yeah.
But you just get better with dealing with it, and you get better at like being able to, if you see a bad comment online, you can handle it better than what I used to be able to handle it.
Yeah, that is hard, and that's definitely a skill to learn. I think the first time I really had to deal with that was 2018 with the Chad Reed podcast, because it was on such a
big platform,
a different level to what it was before. He'd never done one before, and it was a few hours and whatever. And man, I got fucking hammered for the first time, and it's hard when it's a organic, slow. We were doing good enough to get Chad on the podcast. Like, he wasn't a friend of mine. He wanted to come on, so we'd sort of been doing good enough. But to just be exposed to essentially the entire industry, and that was the show that like Casey and Ricardo and like everyone started listening to from that point. But I got fucking hammered, and I had no way of knowing, and I wasn't from this world. I was just a dude that was like producing my own little thing. Then all of a sudden, you've just got there's one video on YouTube that probably has 3,000 comments like saying I'm a dickhead basically. And I was just like,
I shouldn't laugh because that's not funny, but
no, it is funny in a way.
But yeah, I hear you.
To deal with that though, I was just like, fuck, this is hectic.
Yeah, and I think now, like the world we live in right now, 2022, the online criticism is is outrageous, and sometimes
Supercars,
like,
it's gnarly.
Yeah, and sometimes like, you know, sometimes it's proper threats, like it's death threats, it's like threats of abuse, physical abuse, that sort of stuff, and I don't know, like we're in a position where we need to have change, and there's some stuff going on with what Aaron Molan's been doing with trolling and that sort of stuff, but we're currently in this position where the online space is so dangerous. Yeah. It's so good, but it's also so dangerous, and we can't keep living like this. Like there needs to be change.
Because it is gnarly in V8 or Supercars, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I sort of hear it mostly through Ains and Maddie, but it actually is quite bad. I don't know that I have ever experienced the level of what goes on in that world. Why is it so bad in that area, do you think? I
don't know if it's like Supercars. I think a lot of sport probably would say that it's really bad for them as well. Yeah. I think it's just we're so, like, that's the industry that we are, you know, immersed in. But, you know, and Chazzy Mostert, he's doing some really good stuff with what he's trying to get out there with, you know, the no social hate hashtag and what he's doing for Dolly's Dream. Yeah. But I remember it was like Adelaide 500 a few years ago, and Rick Kelly had an incident in pit lane where he crashed, and I interviewed him sort of in the heat of the moment, and I can't remember my exact words, but whatever I said to him, his answer was kind of like, I suppose, seen as controversial or something like that. And he got slammed, like he got like serious hate, and it was threats and like death threats and threats to his family and his son and all that sort of stuff. And it knocked me for six, because I was like, I'm the person who put the microphone in his face that led to him saying what he said, and therefore led to like, and I really took that quite hard and quite personally, and I really struggled to navigate how, well, this is my job as a reporter, as a presenter, is to get the information, but I need to ensure that I'm doing it. You also protect the drivers. Exactly, yeah. And I don't want to put anyone under the bus. And it was a real difficult time for me to just like work out, well, hang on a second, like, how do I do this? Like, how do I ask the right question that gets the response I want without like ensuring that they're still protected in a way. And I had some, you know, again, I was lucky. I had good people around me who sort of got me through that, and it probably sounds dramatic to someone, but it's a sense of responsibility because of what's going out there, you know, and we're in this position now where, like, it doesn't matter what people say, people are going to be annoyed. Like, you're never going to please everyone, which is, I suppose, a thing you've got to get comfortable with. Yeah. But then things happen on the weekend, like just recently in Perth, when Will won, and there was a controversial moment between him and Cam Waters, and the threats of abuse and, again, death threats, and like I was getting threatened on my DMs because I'm Will's wife, and I'm like, what have I got to do with any of this, you know? And but stuff like that is so, like, it's disgusting, it's gross that, you know, someone like myself or even fans of mine sent me messages saying, oh, we just sent Will a congratulations and we're now getting slammed online because we're on his side type thing, or whatever it may be. And that's the stuff we need to get rid of. Like, that is, you can be passionate about your team and passionate about a sport, but threatening violence or threatening, you know, abuse and all that sort of stuff, and personal threats is just, there is absolutely no excuse for any of that.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing, is that it's just a game essentially, you know, like that.
Correct.
We're just here watching. Yeah. Oi, Rains, can you get Griff to turn that AC on and close the vents?
Super hot in here.
Yeah, it's starting to heat up. Yeah, get him to make it cold too, if possible. Yeah, this studio is extremely soundproof, but it's also there's no airflow, and we've got like
a sauna.
Yeah, we got like this soundproof box that comes from the aircon, but with the way the vents work, it doesn't work properly. It's like the one thing that's wrong with this with this studio. And then as soon as you have it cold enough to have the studio nice, out there is just like an igloo, and everyone's in like ski jackets and shit. We can't get it right. I think you've got, on the one side, you've got these fans that are passionate enough to care.
Yeah, and we want that.
But there's a line where you're like, okay, you've gone from passionate to weirdo. Yeah. Let's have less weirdo and more passionate. Yeah. And it's hard to get that balance.
Yeah, and look, I just, when I was on SAS last year, that sort of opened me up to a whole new audience as well, because most of my career has been a pretty specific audience. It's been a motorsport based audience, and then, you know, I did SAS, and then all of a sudden you're on on a primetime sort of television show, on a mainstream network. And so you've got all these other people who are now, introduced to you. And there was a couple of episodes where, like I looked at some of the comments on like TikTok and stuff, and I was just like, holy shit, like this is next level, just how can you be so angry at someone or hate weird, someone who you've never met and you've seen them for like 10 minutes on a television show? Like it's blows my mind that people can be so incensed and so like have so much rage against you that they've never met you. Like it's bizarre. I just don't understand it.
I think that's my ultimate position as well on it, is that I actually don't have any friends in my life that would leave a YouTube comment or a TikTok comment in that way. Yeah. So I care about the people that are like my friends, essentially. Yep. They're good morals. Yep. They're, good people. If they think I'm a dickhead and they want to say it to me, they're not going to leave a comment on YouTube or my Instagram. They're going to talk to me. And so it's like, I guess I figured out that I can't take stock in what those people kind of say. And I also think it's nice when you reach a point on your Instagram or your TikTok where you actually can't keep up with the comments. Yeah. So you just don't go there anymore because it's not like a place that you can have any kind of legitimate discourse. Like there used to be a way on Instagram where if I commented and someone replied, I'd see that reply and you could sort of have a conversation. Yeah. And now we just don't have that. Yeah. So
and I think, and then people ask me this all the time, like, how do you deal with the trolls or the negative comments? And I think I'd struggle to believe you if you said you'll never, ever, ever, ever like care. Like, I think everyone always has an element of, oh, that's pretty rude. Or like, hold on, that's, like that sort of cut, deep a little bit.
Well, that. I think my take on it is, sorry to cut you off. The stuff that has a bit of truth in it. Yeah. That's the shit that hurts. That so hurts. They're the comments that you read and they actually affect you when there is a bit of truth. Like, I was a bit of a dickhead. You're right. The ones where you're like, fair play, they're the ones that get you. But
what upsets me, or what upset me, particularly last year, I had a couple of trolls, that's what they are, and they were saying stuff about my family. And when my dad passed away, I had a particular person who was like commenting on all of my photos and on my family's photos as well. And I was like, look, I put my life on Instagram and I put, what I want out there, and I'm comfortable with that, but do not dare touch my family and like, do not bring them into this. They didn't choose this. Yeah. They didn't choose to be, part of a public life. I did. So that seriously crossed a line for me. And, there was absolutely no excuse for anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm very lucky in that sense of not, like, I guess I don't have to deal with it in that same way, but maybe there's a day that comes. But I think probably when you are on that more national, I think that's one of the things with the podcast where I feel like it's lucky in a sense in that lane, is that I'm kind of only being shown to people that kind of want to see what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, they're choosing to listen to you. Yeah,
and then anytime that it's like forced upon people in a sense, obviously people can choose to watch, but when you've got 4 or 5 free-to-air channels and you're on one of those, there's a lot of people. They're not necessarily picking to watch you.
Yeah, exactly.
They're picking to watch that channel, or they've only got these channels to watch. I think that changes the game completely.
Yeah, totally. And look, I don't want people to think that I've just spent my whole life getting slammed, because I've got some really good people that have supported me and like amazing people.
We can build great friendships.
Yeah, and that's
it. How we know each other,
exactly, through Instagram. And there's so many people that I feel like I've known them forever, and I know them so well, but we've never even met before. Yeah. So like in that sense, it's awesome, and it has allowed me to have a really awesome fan base that are so supportive of me, and they keep choosing to follow me, and all I do is put up mostly photos of my dogs or me running or something like that. But so that's the good side of it, and I think, unfortunately got to take the good and the bad. Yeah. But like you just got to focus on the good stuff.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to navigate just in general. And I think that even if because there's people that are famous on Instagram, but are not famous for anything, but they're kind of...
Hey, mate, you made the Gold Coast Top 100 influencers.
True. But
you're famous, bro.
Yeah, right. Fuck. Hoping no one would ever mention that. So they kind of have to deal with a level of being known, but if you take that away, if you don't exist digitally, and if you just have your real life, I think that's probably something I'm trying to work on a little bit more, because I'm not very Instagrammy in terms of my personal. I don't post much at all. I don't scroll a lot at all. And I see a real, I guess even at this point with the podcast, I can watch a clip and it doesn't even feel like me. It sort of just feels like a product, like feels like my job. So there's a weird identification thing that goes on with Instagram or being a personality, because you essentially, you exist in this different place. Because the internet, it's kind of everywhere, but it's nowhere at the same time. And there's a version of you that exists on there. And then there's a version of you that exists in your house with no phone in your hands and the shutters are closed and you're making a coffee in your underwear and then you're sitting on the couch. It's a very weird thing just in general for people to navigate. Yeah,
no, I agree. And I think, why are people watching me? Like, why are they choosing to follow me and watching my stupid stories? But then I do it to other people. Like, I'm like, well, why am I looking at her, like that person? Like, because I don't know, you just go down a rabbit hole and you end up like, I don't know, 3 years deep into someone's Instagram. You're like, what am I doing? But that's, I don't know, like that's what we're just weirdly wired. Our brains are like so invested into these other people that we don't really know. Yeah. It's bizarre.
But I think there's a lot to gain from it in a sense too, because you can kind of, it's how I've always looked at it with the podcast, is you almost have mentors. Yeah. Because I know from a lot of messages I get about the podcast, there's a lot of people, and you look into their Instagram and it's nothing against these people. They're fucking legends, but their life isn't this crazy. There's not that much excitement in it. They live in a small town from a small place. They're just raising a family. They're fully doing their thing in their own little nutshell. When will they have access to a person that can inspire them to do this? Or with your, like, when you were training for I think it was the Cairns Marathon, or Cairns Ironman that you did, I'm like watching your training. I train every single day and I'm looking at your shit being like, fuck yeah, she's getting it, you know? So there is a really cool element of being able to have access to these people. There might not be anyone in this guy's small town that is running a triathlon that can psych him up to do get on Zwift, or so you kind of do have this little community, and I think that people, maybe they don't take it serious in that sense, that they're just like kind of willy-nilly following everyone and creeping this person, that person, going down it. But you're kind of actually getting a chance to curate your own inspiration. It's like a living mood board in a sense, if you follow the right people. You've
put it well. And I think that's the point. You've got to follow the right people. Like, there's a lot of shit online and just a lot of time wasting. But and I suppose I learnt that last year when I was training and then training for SAS afterwards. Just people like, you know, oh, you've inspired me to do this, or like, I've never run before, but now I'm, you know, training for a 5K run or whatever it may be. And in my head, I'm just doing what I do, you know, I'm just doing this. But then to hear stuff like that, you're like, wow, like people are invested in what I'm doing and taking something from it that's going to benefit them, without me even really knowing that it's, you know, that I'm doing that, which is like a kind of a weird thing, and sort of was really strange to hear, particularly after SAS, like people, you know, sending me messages saying like, you know, I watched with my daughter and you know, you're a role model for her, and like, that's quite, like, I was very overwhelmed to hear stuff like that, because it's like you have a sense of responsibility to these people and people who are following you, and you want to make sure that, you know, you're holding yourself in, you know, a good regard, and you're not being a dickhead, or you're not posting stuff that you shouldn't be posting. Yeah, no, and I think that it is important as well, I think, to have really great women in motorsports, just to, I guess, go back to our world of motorsports a bit, because like, if you gave me a choice these days of having like you as a presenter at the MX Nationals or an all-male cast, I
definitely want to have someone like you there. It just adds something different. There's a different perspective that you can come at it from as a woman. There's a different delivery. There's a different way that men and women interact together.
I agree with you. Yeah,
and,
I totally agree.
So I think that it's just kind of, it's cool for you to be the kind of person that you are, as even someone that other young girls or women can aspire to be, because I do think it's a very positive thing for all of like motorsport in general, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, I suppose for me it's kind of strange because I never set out, like when I very first started this, 15 or 16 years ago, I never was like, okay, this is where I'm going to land, you know? Yeah. It's kind of just like things have developed and I've done different things and then all of a sudden you're like hearing like, holy shit, like what, how did I get here? Like what even just happened in my life that I'm in this position where there are people and young people and women who are asking me for advice on how they should develop their career or what pathway they should take. And I'm very grateful that I'm in that position now, that even though in my head I don't feel like I still feel like the young kid that just arrived, you know, I don't feel like I should be someone that people should be looking up to. But at the same time, it's nice that there are these people that are coming up to me and asking questions, and, you know, they want me to talk on behalf of women and or behalf of, you know, just some, you know, a different perspective on what it is like to be at a racetrack. You know, I think if you just had if you're on TV and you've just got a cast of all guys that have all ex-racers or they're all ex-drivers, the experience they're going to give you is very like you know, like it's kind of like one-dimensional because they're all coming from the same lived experience. Whereas, you know, you add people like myself who's never raced, or, you know, a female who's raced, or, you know, whether it's just a male who hasn't raced but he's got a different perspective because of how he grew up and how he's learnt the sport. Like you need the light and shade of it all. Like you need all of it. You can't just have one. Oh,
I completely agree. And I also think it's important though in saying that to acknowledge like when it can go too far as well. And I think that's probably the reason, the fact that it can go too far is probably the reason why there's a whole group of people that just doesn't want it to even happen at all. And I think that's probably the hard bit. I think it's important as well. That's something you do so well. There's just no over the top female. It's not an angle. It's not the only angle. And I think that's definitely where it needs to get to, is that let's say you've got 8 people trying out or you've got 8 spots on a broadcast team and you've got 300 people that are these potential applicants or whatever. 4 of them are just going to be the best and they're women, and 4 of them are going to be the best and they're men. The ultimate dream would be that it just works out that way because you've given these people the opportunity and the best people get the jobs. And it just so happens that this chick, she's the best. And I mean, you know, people say about you that you are one of the most knowledgeable people on the broadcast overall. And it's, again, you've never raced, you're not coming from any particular background, you're just on your merit with the work and the investment that you've put in. You add as much to the broadcast as an ex-champion. And I think like that's the ultimate model that everyone should kind of look to. And it's almost like, how do we invest in that talent in a sense from like an earlier age, so that when, you know, you get the next you that comes into the sport, it's just like red hot. And I think that will happen, because I think there are more opportunities now in all sports and in all areas, because just the way the world is. Like, you know, when I started, you know, you're only on free to air television, and, you know, there's not really a digital space, and there's no streaming, and there's sort of like the website wasn't really like, you know, the thing that it is now. Whereas like now I look at, you know, if you were there now, there are so many different avenues. Like you can start with like Instagram Live, or you can start on a Facebook Live, or you can start on a YouTube, or, you know, and you can kind of navigate through these other channels that really weren't, well, maybe they were there, but we sort of just weren't using them, you know, when I first came in. And there's all these other places that you can land before, you know, you try to get to, you know, that sort of main broadcast. And like even within Supercars, there's things that they're doing now for particularly for young girls, like, you know, Girls on Track, and, you know, all these other workshops and things like that girls can be a part of, so that they can get an introduction. Like even the other week I did an interview with a girl who she was doing
is it HSC, like a year 12 exams?
Yeah.
And she had chosen to do it on a topic about women in motorsport. And so she interviewed me for her sort of final paper. And I'm like, well, God, I don't, like, no one's ever, like, that just, I don't think anyone would have thought to do something like that, you know, maybe 15, 20 years ago. Like, we're in such a different place now, like, of the world.
Who do you do that on 15 years ago?
Yeah, and even I don't think, like, schools would have probably given you the opportunity, like, to 15, 20 years ago, to do a project on women in motorsport for your final year exam type thing. Like, I think we've evolved so far that there's so many other opportunities for people to get a start and then work their way through, so that when they do land on the broadcast or wherever it may be, they're bang on, you know, the best there is type thing. Yeah. And like, I always would take offense to someone who said, oh, you're just there because you're the girl. And like, I really take offense to that, because if I'm just there because I'm a girl, I shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be the way it is. Like, I should be there because I've worked my ass off and I've worked really hard to get this opportunity, and now I've kept the opportunity because I'm continuing to work hard and do a good job.
Yeah. What was the process? Obviously, being married to a driver is gonna give you a bit of a head start knowledge wise, but did you put in a bunch of your own research, and what did that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously having Will was a benefit, because I got firsthand information from him, you know, like after a race meeting on, you know, what went wrong, what went right, that sort of thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, it came down to me putting the work in. Like, I used to arrive to and I still do, but, you know, arrive to a race meeting and have pages and pages and pages of notes, and, you know, every single driver, you know, had them all written down, and like, you know, their statistics plus, like, okay, what have they been doing in the last 2 weeks, you know? And things are easier now because you've got Instagram and you can quickly jump on and see what people have been doing in their lives. But, you know, that's really what it comes down to. And, you know, watching the races when we get home, you know, even though I've been there and I've watched them all day, but, you know, you see it from a different perspective, and there's things that you miss. And so there's no like secret. It's just like immersing yourself in the sport and putting in the time and getting to know the people in the lane and ensuring that they know you, so that, you know, when you walk into the garage, it's not like, you know, who's this person walking in asking questions. Like, you know, you have that, build that rapport and build that relationship with everybody in pit lane. And I think that's what, you know, I can bring to the coverage, is that, you know, I've got a really good relationship with everyone up and down the pit lane. And, you know, that always helps when you're trying to get information out of people, because no one ever wants to tell you their shit stuff, do they? Like, it's like, so, you know, you really need to work on those relationships to ensure that you've got the respect both ways, so that, you know, you can ask them questions when it's a crappy time. And
you would have had to fall in love with the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
To be the level that you're at now. What was the process like of falling in love with the sport that itself? When did that
I think that was pretty early on. Like, even when I just did that year as Miss V8 Supercar, and I went to every event, and you know, you get to know the people, and being there at the track, and, you know, trackside for every race. Like, yeah, it's just sort of almost happened straight away. Like, this is a sport that I want to be involved in, and this is cool. And
what was it about the sport, you reckon?
Oh, look,
because to be a dancer and then to be a supercar chick they're
very different,
fairly different.
Yeah. I think, you know, obviously the racing itself is, you know, it sort of speaks for itself, but for me it was more about the people and having the relationships with the people, so that you have an investment in the sport. Like, you know, I mean, you'd be able to say the same thing for motocross. You have these friendships and relationships with these people, so you're invested in their success, or you're invested when it turns pear-shaped. You have, like, you feel like it's part of you type thing. And I suppose that's where it came from. Like, I had an investment in the sport because of Will, and then B, because I'd, you know, struck up really good friendships with these other drivers, and you know, like, you are now riding their, you know, wave of their journey and that sort of thing. And that's really, I suppose, why I loved it so much early on. Did you have reservations of getting with Will with the idea of wanting to do the media side of the sport as well? Because that can be hard when you're working with, so don't date people that you work with kind of thing. No, like, totally. And I think in those early years we were very, you know, I really tried to keep things really separate. And even for the first few years, we never, like, spoke about being together, like, particularly, you know, on air. Like, I would, if someone said, oh, you know, your boyfriend Will, like, I really didn't want that to be
like a topic
because I felt like it shouldn't be necessary, and I've really prided myself on being, unbiased, and I still to this day I feel like it's so important for me to be unbiased. So if
anything, Will probably doesn't get what he deserves in a sense, because you probably don't. There's like a line of being biased, and you're like, okay, there's got to be like a comfort zone here. So and you miss out on all this, even though you deserve it.
And I think back to like Tassie years ago. So Will and James Courtney had a bit of a run in, and like James was having words with him.
James's back.
No. But then I had to interview James on the grid, and so like they've had this. They've had words, and I obviously go see Will. I'm like, what's happened, right? And then like on air, it's like, so James, and then having to be that person. Yeah. So like you're in this like weird situation. But I've always made sure that, well, I'd like to think that I've always made sure that when camera's on and microphones in hand, I am just Riana who's working with the broadcast, and and that's it. Like and keep it fair.
And so I guess. How do you guys navigate the public relationship in a sense? Like, what has that ever caused any sort of dramas? Like, me personally, I have absolutely no interest in sharing anything about my personal life in that sense. Yeah. And I guess it's a bit different. Like, I can kind of have that choice, I guess. But for you guys, you almost don't have a choice. If people know you together, you're both public figures. It sort of automatically makes your relationship public. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, maybe? No, that is fair to say. And I suppose we've been together now, like, I'll get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's for 15 years.
Yeah, right. It's a minute.
It's been a lifetime. And I think as we've gotten older and, we're married now and we, settled in our home, like, I don't think about it as much as what I did say before we were married or when we were early in our relationship, and I was really conscious of being seen as like my own person and he's his own person. But even now when we go to a racetrack, like we travel separately, we different accommodation. Like I can go.
That's cool.
I can go a whole day, like 2 days, and not even speak to him. Like I'll send him a text here and there, but not actually physically see him or speak to him. And that's just like,
that actually sounds awesome.
But I want us to both just be doing our own thing, like I think it's important, like he's focused and got his stuff, and I'm focused and doing my stuff, and like obviously throughout the day, if I can, I'll quickly run in and say like what's happening, and that's also like my job too, like I need to know like what's going on. But yeah, I think, as you said, like the choice of being a public, like we are both public figures in a sense. So therefore people kind of know our life. The only time I was probably more private is when we got married, and I asked everyone like not to take photos or not to post photos. So not people could take photos, but I didn't want people posting photos for a few days, because I felt like it's the one time where I really wanted it just to be about us and our friends and family and normal. And, like a week later, it's like, yeah, cool, you can post stuff, but just give us this time, give us these 4 days or whatever it is, like just to have a moment where we're not on a website or something.
Yeah, because I think it's, again, a different situation. But yeah, for me, the idea of just having every part of your life out in public just seems almost unfair in a way. Like what did then you get for yourself in a sense? Yeah,
and I suppose Will and I aren't friggin' household names. Like, yes, within the motorsport industry, people know who we are, and maybe a little bit more so because I've done the show last year, but we're not household names, and I can't even imagine what it would be like if you were that next level of recognizable celebrity status type thing, because we're lucky, I can go to the supermarket wearing no makeup and like basically pajamas, and people, no one cares. Like, I'm not going to be on the front cover of the friggin' TV, magazines and stuff. So we're lucky in that sense. But I suppose in the other sense, it's like, and Will probably says to me, like, stop posting stuff, because I just post everything. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like you're just working it out on the fly. Like, it's not like I've made a conscious decision to say, I'm going to post this, but not post that. Like, you kind of just, and you develop as a person. Like, as you grow older, like, things are more, certain things are more important, other things aren't important. And it's like your relationship develops and how you want to be seen develops. And like, it's a constant change. And I don't think, people could say, oh, you were like this 5 years ago. It's like, well, yeah, I was like that 5 years ago, but we've, like everyone evolves. You have to be evolving.
The fact that you don't stay together on race weekends, that sort of seems like the move. I don't know if it's like weird to say that, but I think that you just see so many dudes get it wrong with their wives and girlfriends, and then wives that are almost indistinguishable from themselves, and it just seems like a whole thing. And from my perspective, and I guess knowing guys more so in like the motocross, supercross, you see some dudes, a chick can fully derail their career, and as a wife you can get it really wrong. So I think the way that you're describing how it works, that seems like you guys actually get it right. And do you see other people or couples or whatever that they definitely just get it wrong? There's not that space or balance.
Yeah, look, and I could only speak from my perspective. Like, it works for us, and it may work for other people to be totally like, together the whole time, and that may get the best out of someone. You don't know. Like, I think obviously I know Will. I know him better than anyone, and likewise he knows me, and I know for him to be able to get the best out of himself on a race weekend is to really be focused and in the zone, and he can also be quite intense on a race meeting. And I need to like not have that. Like, I know that sounds really rude, but I'm focused on what I'm doing, and I can't be both things. Like, I need to do my thing, and I can be like every now and again I'm like, hey, how you going, that sort of stuff, but I can't be like 100% in both camps over a race meeting. It just doesn't work, and that's what works for us. So
it's cool, because you do see people that get it wrong, and you definitely see partners that it feels like it's as much about them as the dude that just rode the bike or drove the car, and it's like, whoa, what the fuck are we watching here? What are we watching here? Is this really necessary? I don't know if that's judgmental or not, but
I get what you're saying.
That's funny. So the dancing thing, to grow up as a dancer, that kind of explains the triathlon athlete stuff now, because my auntie owned a dance school in Cairns, and my sister did the whole thing, like the 4-year-old doing the ballet exams, doing the Eisteddfods, doing the song and dance, doing the modern, doing the jazz, but I know that world has as good as anybody. That's a gnarly way to grow up.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that my parents put me in dancing, because it teaches you discipline. It teaches you like
excellence.
Excellence, like being, like having to put the work in to be the best. There obviously is some naturally gifted kids, but you've got to put the work in. And after school, like I remember, mum would pick me up from school. I'd eat like dinner, or I'd eat a snack on the way to the studio, and then I'd be there for, say 3-4 hours after school. And then, again, she'd pick me up, and I'd be like eating my dinner on the way home. And like, that was like every night. And then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And I loved it. Like, I honestly thought that one day I would be like
prima ballerina.
a backup dancer for like a Beyonce, something like that. It was my life. Like, that's all I did, all I knew. I suppose when you say that sort of led me to being amateur athlete, I probably don't give myself enough credit, because I was an athlete as a child. Like, that's what I did as a dancer, and I've got enough broken bones to prove that I did the work and had all the injuries that went along with it. And I suppose that discipline for training is kind of that's where it started. Yeah,
that lifestyle is no joke. If you're one of those kids that's doing it to the level that you're doing it, that's what my sister was. And that it was a pretty successful dance studio when they did all the Australian competitions and stuff like that. And to then be the niece of the chick that owned it, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation. Man, the work that my sister used to put in. And she ended up, I think when she was kind of like towards the end of school, she sort of just phased out of it a little bit. It's pretty gnarly regime. Yeah. It's sort of like gymnastics.
Yeah, very much so.
It's the same sort of thing.
And like I was like your sister, I did like jazz, tap, ballet, acrobats.
Yeah.
And, you know, at like a high level for all of them. And, you know, like I remember I was training for I was going to be Alice in Wonderland for a ballet production and snapped my ankle so bad into like, just like horrendous. And then that was the end of that production. But I've got so many stories of, you know, like big injuries as a kid from just absolutely smashing my body. And then now as an adult, I'm like, that's why everything hurts because of those years of growing up and just being like, you know, to the nth degree with everything.
I'm reading a book at the moment. It's called Peak, the New Science of Excellence, I think. Can you just double check that? Because I had a few people DM me. Just put it up on the thing. I think so. Yeah, Peak, the New Science of Excellence. Yeah. But yeah, it talks a lot about child prodigies and how you get to be an expert at something, and a lot of the scientific studies that they've done around excellence and peak performers in later years comes down to childhood. And a lot of it, they study musicians, people that play the violins, probably one of the hardest, I guess, things that you can do, and just the amount of hours that these kids put in from such a young age. And I think about my sister. We did a lot of sport, but me and Maddie, we played football, then we did athletics, then we did BMX, then we did motocross. So we were doing sport almost every day, but we didn't have the focus on one thing, which I'm kind of glad now because I'm good at a few different sort of skills. But that excellence and that level of excellence that you can achieve as a kid, and dancing's so gnarly for it, and like and gymnastics as well, and the flexibility that you get and the pain that you put yourself through as a kid. It's a pretty special way to grow up. In a way, I guess you miss out on some things, but to have a kid like, and it sets you up, I think, for later on in life, which you're probably seeing the results of now. And my sister's the same. Like, she's a pretty big HR manager for a really big company, and it's pretty surprising to me what she can do. In a sense, I just look at this young chick that kills it. But when I really think back to what she did as a kid, it kind of makes sense that she's a pretty gnarly person nowadays, because that's all she knew growing up.
And I think like I grew up probably quicker than most kids, because like from an early age, so from 9 years old, I had my first job. I was a cheerleader for the Western Reds, which was a rugby team in Perth.
Up the Reds.
So from 9, like that was, and then I went in and I was doing TV commercials for Foxtel. Like I remember when Foxtel first came out, and I was on one of the ads for it. And then I was a cheerleader for Perth Glory, which is the soccer team in Perth, and I did that for years. I was part of a cabaret group, where we had a singer and these, you know, us girls as backup dancers, and we would travel all throughout Western Australia and perform and, you know, part of some pretty big productions. And so like I got to do I had some really amazing experiences at a young age through dancing and through performing arts. And I suppose that put me in good stead, like to be able to, have that lived experience and have that, you know, stuff behind me. And this is all before I was sort of 18, like it's a lot of life for a kid type thing, but I'm glad that I had that. And I think as an adult, when I started getting into other, like triathlon and the cycling and stuff, and that understanding of needing to put the work in to get the gain, obviously was put from a young age. And look, I don't consider myself a fantastic athlete, but I give everything 110%, and that's probably sometimes to my detriment, and I ended up injured or sick or whatever. But like I feel like I have that mindset
it's like an extra gear, right?
To keep going.
And so do you think back now when you're training for a tri or doing like the SAS thing, do you really go back to that mentality from being a kid?
Yeah, I suppose I've never really thought about it, but now that we're talking about it, it all makes sense. And look, for me, like doing triathlon is not a natural sport for me. Like I was a kid that like was really good at running 100 meters, or was like really good at doing like one, dancing for 2 minutes or whatever. Like that was, my body was good for that stuff. And then to have like to move into like a more long distance sport of triathlon is very unnatural. And I've really had to work hard, particularly in running, to change my body and sort of get into that mode. And sort of just slowly, ticked off boxes. And then last year and went and did the Ironman, and that was something I never ever thought I would ever be able to do.
So break down, what's the legs of Ironman?
So it's a 3.8k swim, and then 180k bike, and then a marathon. So 42k's running.
Fuck.
Yeah. So
that's a lot.
I mean, pros are doing an Ironman anywhere from like high 7 hours to low 8 hours. Like that's a pro. But like for me, it took me like 13 hours. So yeah, it's a long day of just grinding out and like mentally, like,
yeah, that's dark.
So when you're on the bike, well, I mean, when you're on, apart from the run, like the swim and the bike, you're not talking to anyone. Like, so the bike leg is over 6 hours. Well, for me, so you're not speaking to anyone for 6 hours, and you're down on your tri bars, like only being able to see the little bit of road ahead of you, and you've got 6 hours of your own head telling you, either keep going or nah, I'm done.
Why
like I'm out. Yeah, like this? Why am I doing this? Why did I think this is a good idea? And that was and that's really like the physical stuff is hard, obviously, but the mental stuff to like be in the zone with your head, to be like, no, you've got to keep going, and once you get off this bike, then you've got another 4 hours of running, before you can stop. But that mental stuff is pretty full on. Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know if I've got that. Yeah.
You'd be surprised what your body can do. And I really learnt with Ironman, and particularly in SAS, your body can do so much more than what we've ever we'll never ever need to be in that place, because in life we're very rarely put in that place. We don't have to.
Yeah.
But if you're forced to go to that place, your body can do so much more than what you give it credit for. And that's really what I learned in those two experiences.
Oh, yeah. As silly as this might sound, filming, when I was doing a lot of documentary filmmaking, a lot of those big Red Bull shoots and stuff, that was some of the most mentally challenging stuff for me, because that sort of felt like a marathon in terms of it was like a 4-day thing. If you're doing like a 4-day shoot, you're up super late at night, and then you're up at 4 a.m. for the sunrise, and your brain's got to be on the whole time. There's pressure because it's a lot of money that you're getting paid to do this production, and then you've got this shoot. You've got to nail these days that you're there, and then you've got to go back and you've got to do the editing, and you're in remote locations. Like we did a shoot once where we had to make like this mini documentary about a race in Alaska, and you're in the Arctic Circle. The van heating went out, so I was sleeping in my snowboard gear, snowboard boots, with like the whole deal, just to try and like survive this night. And you're there. There's nowhere else that you can go. So it's so gnarly when you willingly put yourself, and then you do that shoot, and then you do another one, and then the next one's in Costa Rica, and then you're hiking with a massive drone for 6 hours to a waterfall. And so there's I guess like a crazy mental place that you go to, and you got to just stay in and stay in the fight, and then it becomes like that one foot in front of the other, and to willingly sign up for that is a pretty crazy deal. And
I remember like before I did Ironman, a friend of mine, he's like, you'll have a moment of despair, but in that moment you need to know that it's a moment, and like moments they just pass, and like then you're on to the next moment. And like I certainly felt that there was like times where I was like, I don't think I can keep going, like it's just too much. But then it's like how quickly you can just like, nope, park that, and we're going again. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going again, so I can still keep going. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just, you're playing this constant battle with your mind about to keep going. And then but I'm done, I've had enough. But it's like, no, you fucking keep going, and like, and it is a cool thing to experience that. And I'm not there's lots of people in life that won't have that experience, because they probably won't be in a situation where they need to be like so dark and deep into themselves to get themselves out of it. But I'm glad I've had that experience, and I know what that feels like.
So you do the dancing for your childhood, and then how long off training are you having, or are you always staying fit and doing some kind of training, or did that like carry through your entire life to this point?
I never stopped, like, unless people say to me all the time, oh, you're always training or you're doing this, but like for me I don't really know any different. Like from a kid that started walking until where I am today, I've never really stopped, apart from if I've been sick or injured. And to me, training doesn't matter what it is, whether it's cycling, swimming, doing yoga, like it's like my meditation. Like some people read books, or some people walk along the beach or walk their dog. Like my meditation, and for my mental health and to keep me in a good place, is to do some form of training. And sometimes that's like a lot and it's pretty full on, and sometimes it's like, oh, okay, like we'll just go to the gym, or like we'll just do a quick cycle or something. But like, so I've probably finished dancing properly, like hardcore dancing, when I was maybe like 19. And then I moved to Queensland, and it was kind of just like a bit of gym, or like go for a run, or like I didn't really know. Like I sort of didn't have anything where I was like, I really love this, that I had when I was dancing. And then it was Will really, he like said, oh, you should try to do some cycling. And I was like, I'll never be a cyclist. Like that is so lame. Like who even does that? And I'll never wear that outfit. Like it's just horrible. And then obviously
neck minute,
exactly. Neck minute, I'm the Australian ambassador for Live. But like, and it's just like dipping your toes into things. And then it was like, oh, like try swimming. I'm like, I hate swimming. I remember as a kid at school, I hated swimming so much. And then and like now I friggin' love swimming. Like I absolutely froth swimming. But it's just like introducing in different things. And then, he was doing triathlons. He's like, you can try a triathlon.
That's it.
And I was like, again, like, no way. Like that is the lamest thing. And then, you start, and then you want to do more, and you want to get better. And, and like, that's kind of how it's gone and now, like, Will's still very much involved in triathlon, but in the last couple of years, I've probably done more than what he has, just because he's been busy with, with work and stuff like that. And now it's like it's my thing. Like I freaking love it, like it's such a cool sport. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of just evolved like that.
That's so cool. Well, so for me, this is, I think, one of the, I guess I can relate to you in this sense of I could kind of see where you're at with it, and you take it seriously like you're an athlete.
Yep.
But you're not getting paid for it. You're not. It's just
you're paying to do it.
And it seems so silly to some people on the outside. So like, why are you killing yourself to do this? And I started jiu-jitsu 5 years ago, and it was random. The most random thing I've ever done in my life. I always did martial arts. So when I was a kid, from when I was, I don't know when I started doing taekwondo, but I did that from about 7 or 6 to 15, and I got pretty good at it, but I never took it seriously. It was just one of those things that was just a dad said you had to do it, so I just went and did it. And then I was like super into UFC and watched every boxing and watched every like always loved martial arts. I never thought I'd do it again. And then we had a friend, his son was real good at jiu-jitsu. They were in town doing a comp. I went and watched it, and he said, you should go do it. So that was on a Sunday, and then the Monday I just went and tried it. And that was 5 years, and I'm just completely obsessed with it. And it just filled this massive hole that I didn't know was there. And so many Australian kids grow up playing sport. We're such a sporting nation, and we grow up, and whether it's football or it's school sports, or you play basketball or whatever it is that you did, and then at some point you're 16, 17 and you finish school and you got no PE class, and then you just stop. You get kind of chucked in with the seniors. So it's a pretty hard transition. I mean, for me, I wouldn't even know if I kept playing football. How the fuck do you play football against 30-year-old men when you age out of the juniors or whatever? But to start jiu-jitsu and to take it really seriously, and I care about it like I'm a professional athlete in a sense. I trained I only trained Thursday through Friday last week, but I did 6 gnarly hard sessions. So everything I got, I was fucked.
Yeah.
By Thursday, I was just dragging my heels at work and I've just cooked myself. Yeah. Doesn't make sense. It's very stupid if you really look at your life, and you'd probably be able to relate. But there's something so amazing in really challenging yourself, and when you're not getting paid for it and no one really cares. I mean, I fucking submit a black belt, I tell someone, they go, I don't give a fuck. Like, well, that doesn't to me, I'm like, that is so crazy. Like, it's so hard to do. That guy's been training 15 years, blah blah blah. So it's like there's this thing that I just take really seriously on. It's sort of this completely internal pursuit in a way, because no one really can relate to it. No one can really, they can't feel what you feel. But I love talking about it, because I just want to encourage people. If you're a kid and played sport and did kind of what we did growing up, and you don't have that as an adult, you can have the same thing. Like, just go and get it for yourself. You'll meet some amazing people. You'll create, some of my best friends now are the boys that I train with, and you've got this accountability. Signing up for the Cairns triathlon is some crazy accountability. That's gonna give you a solid 6 months of your life where motivation, you just don't even have to find it. You've got it. It's exactly. It's there. It's on that entry form. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And the people that we've met through our running group and through doing triathlons and like some of our lifelong friends, and you know, people say, well, why the hell would you get up at 4:30 on a Wednesday to go running? And I'm like, because we get up. Look where we live. Like, we go to the beach and we run along the beach, like, for fun. Like, and you look out when you're having a coffee at the end of it, and like, we're in this really cool group where it's not like you don't have to commit. You can come and go as you please. And we've got we've got ear, nose and throat surgeons. We've got pediatricians. We've got obstetricians. We've got Will, the athlete. We've got grandpop, like Pop. He's literally a pop. Like, we've got these huge variety of people that are all coming together just to enjoy a bit of exercise in this most incredible location on the Gold Coast. And like, at the end of it, we have a coffee and say, all right, cool, have a good day. Like, it's friggin' awesome. And I'm like you, I tell people, why would I not do that? That's amazing. I've got this awesome opportunity to get up and go and exercise in a country that looks like our country. Like, how good is that? It's so friggin' simple, and it's running. Anyone can run. Like, basically anyone can run. Like, you don't really need anything. You just go and off you go. And we've had some of the best experiences, through doing triathlon and through doing these events, or whether it be a charity event or a cycling event. Like, a few years ago, Will and I, we cycled from Townsville to Cairns with a charity group raising money for children's cancer. And like, that was 4 days of, like, seriously the 4 best days of our lives. Like, we had so much fun. We saw all this beautiful, beautiful drive. Amazing scenic views, and like, with some really cool people. And then at the end of the day, we've done some really cool things for kids who are struggling and families who are struggling. And like, aside from it taking 4 days out of our life, like, it's, you can do it, like, it's fine. And I think that these experiences that we've been able to have, like, have just, like, enriched our lives so much through doing exercise or through doing something physical, I completely agree. And I think that my life's gotten better as a result of it as well. And it's really obvious for me to see, even having a conversation with Maddie. Even Maddie's like, man, fuck, you trained so much last week, because I said something about training 6 times and there was a public holiday, so I rode Monday too, so essentially I trained all week. But yeah, he's like, it's a lot, dude. Like, that's a lot of work to put in, but I feel like the benefits that I get out of it just outweighs, or it's, to me, a complete no-brainer. I think that there's the martial arts skill to where I think that there's a certain level of, like, confidence that you have in your life now. I think with any person in any kind of physical altercation, unless it was someone really, really big, then I'm going to feel quite confident to not even have that situation escalate. I don't feel, because I feel like fear is probably what creates a lot of the problems in those kind of situations. So, that aside, which I think is a super important thing, but just completely take that out of it. The discipline, the friendship that you've got, the the way that you can see, I mean, I don't know if you can relate, but there's times where I'll be leaving the office. Like, I basically train every night at 6 till 7, and then if I do a double at 7 to 8. So from 6 o'clock onwards, I'm kind of at training. So I'll be here in a terrible mood, not feeling like training. I'll be really sore. I'll be over it. And I'll spend probably from 4:30 to 5:30 trying to talk myself out of training. But then I find myself going home and getting my gi off the line and making my electrolyte drink and packing my towel while I'm still having this conversation in my head that I just pack your bag for tomorrow. You don't have to go tonight. Just, you'll be fine. And then I'm like, all right, I'll just pack my bag for tomorrow. And then you grab the keys and then you lock the door and then you're in the car. Yeah. And you can get to this place in your life where you just are doing the right thing. It's the right thing to go and do that session. There's the physical benefits, there's the mental benefits, there's the skill benefits. The right decision for me on a daily basis, objectively speaking, is to go to training and do my thing and do it with as little ego as possible. Yeah. And then the wrong thing to do is just to stay home. So if you can get to the point where you're autopilot doing the right thing for your life, even though your voice in your head is telling you not to do it, that's a really crazy place to be in your life. And I really kind of hunt that out nowadays, is like, am I going when I don't want to go? Am I doing the right thing for myself even when I actually don't want to do it? And I think that, to me, it's like that's the most valuable thing, because I think that then can kind of translate to everything in your life.
And I think for us, like particularly for Will and myself, like our life, and you can relate to this as well, is pretty hectic. You know, like it's lots of travel, it's lots of pressure, it's like mentally exhausting. Like particularly for Will, you know, you're so entrenched in this life where every single thing you do is judged by other people and people within your industry. So for us, it's like, you know, we can go to a triathlon event as total rookies and as total amateurs, and no one's expecting Will to win, or no one's expecting me to do well. So we can go there and just, you know, enjoy that experience, and with some really good people who are all there for the right reasons. Like, I mean, obviously you've got pros there, but like everyone else is just there because they want to have a go at a sport or do something like that. And so for us, doing this outside of our life in racing and TV is kind of like an outlet, you know. It's kind of like this space where we can go, and we're just the same as everyone else. Like, we're no different. We're not, you know, in the spotlight. It's just like we just rock up to training. We're exactly the same as everyone else, and everyone's just kind of got their thing. It's like, oh, are you training for the marathon, or you're training for this, or you're training for that, or no, I'm just here just having a jog, you know. And we're all just there because we all just like the experience and enjoy being, you know, active. And I think that's another reason why we are, you know, why we love it so much, is because it's just that element of being outside of what we normally do, you know?
Yeah, that makes so much sense as well, that it can just be like an escape, where you just be a sort of normal person. I think that's probably one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu as well, is that it's such a great equalizer. Because, and I mean, even in our academy, you can't even wear a fancy nice gi. You have to wear, there's two colors, there's blue or there's white, and everyone wears the same. So you don't even get a chance to be the guy that has the nice bike and the nice kit. Everyone is the exact same there. And I think there's even a benefit in just going there, whether you've got a big podcast, whether you're a garbage man, whether you're a TV host, whether you're whatever you are on the mat, it's all equal. Everyone's the same. And I think that a big thing too was I learnt a lot about ego through jiu-jitsu, and I don't know whether it's the same with triathlon, but now that I think about it, I guess it was just never framed in the motocross sense. But I mean, my ego gets tested on the bike a lot because I fucking suck and I really wish I was good. But there's a real gnarly ego element of doing a martial art, and there's a big focus on it, and you really learn about your ego in that sense. And I think that with doing a triathlon or the distance stuff, the ego does come into play, but it's in that sense of wanting to quit. Whereas I think with the jiu-jitsu stuff, a lot of it's just showing up, because for me, I'll go to class tonight I don't know who's going to be there.
Yeah.
There's going to be some dudes that can fuck me up. And it's really uncomfortable to be that, like, have that little control over something and just know, okay, when I'm with that guy, I get ragdolled. Yeah. And then you've got to, he might be a garbage man. He might be a fireman. He might be a whatever. And all that's kind of taken out of it. And you've got to be humble enough to shake that dude's hand at the start of 5 minutes and just know for 5 minutes you're just going to get thrown around like a kitten. Yeah. And I think that there's a massive value in that, and I feel like triathlons would be the same. You're so vulnerable. I mean, you've got sweat everywhere, and you've got this pain that you're going through, and there's like
it's not a pretty sport.
No, and you just get you're dragging yourself through hell, and like you said, you're just stuck with that voice inside your head.
And I think that's like what I've learned, like I was saying before, is just, you know, being able to get through that. And, you know, you look around when you're on a triathlon course, and triathlon in particular, like, you see lots of different shapes and sizes, and young and old, and people, you go, you know, no disrespect, like, okay, they're doing it. Mate, get your shit together. Like, keep going type thing. And but that's what I've learned the most from doing it, is just like that you can get yourself to a place where, like, it's rough, like it's really rough, but somehow, like, you can keep going, like you literally can keep going. And I suppose that's probably what's got me through, like, you know, some of the events that I've done, like, and maybe I shouldn't have done them, I don't know, like I ended up injured or sick or whatever, but I've got this thing in my head that's like, you know, you can actually keep going and you can do this.
And do you think that then helps you in your just day-to-day life? Are you leaning on that experience, and how often are you leaning on that experience?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think every day in a small way, like, you learn how strong, you know, you can be. And I suppose focus more on, like, when I did Ironman and then even when I did the SAS show, like, you have no understanding of what you can do until you're placed in that space. And I came out of both of those experiences and was like, I actually cannot believe, like, even now people say, oh my God, you did so well in SAS. I'm like, I actually cannot believe I did that. Like, I honestly was like, was that somebody else? Because I didn't think going into it I'd be able to do some of the things I did. And now in my normal, you know, like in everyday life, you're like, you know, you got to give yourself more credit. Like, you know, you are very capable of doing lots of different things, and, you know, and things you've done are like stuff that people would just absolutely never do in their lifetime. So I need to now remind myself, just like, you know, you've done some cool shit. Like, you know, be proud of what you've done. Yeah, back yourself and be proud of what you've done. Yeah,
the signing up for a triathlon would be a hectic feeling, because I know whenever I sign up for a jiu-jitsu tournament, I get like nerves. Yeah. It's a quite an anxious feeling, because once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't back out of shit like that. Yeah. And that net, whatever time that it is, I actually always sign up the last minute for any of those competitions, because I just hate living with that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like a shadow that you live with that's right there all the time. You go, I've got this triathlon coming. It gives
accountability, and it gives you a reason to show up when you feel like shit. And particularly for when I signed on for Ironman, I'd been in a really dark place in my life. Like, my dad had passed away, and I'd lost my job, and Will had lost his job, and there was a period through the end of 2020 where I was not in a good place, and I needed a reason to basically get up and get out of bed. And I was like, look, this is going to be my reason. Like, because I could continue spiraling really badly, or I could say, I'm committing to this and I'm going to get up every day from now on in and train and have something to work towards. So in a sense, it was like a real, like, it was necessary for me. Yeah. And that was in the back of my mind, like, every day. Like, I trained 7 days a week for basically 6 or 7 months.
So that's how long it was from when you signed up to when you...
Yeah. And, you know, when I say training, I'm like, most days were twice a day. And, like, towards, you know, the last couple of months, like, you know, I'd be doing 6-7 hour rides on a weekend, like, then doing a, you know, 15-20k run or whatever, and like, they're big sessions, you
know,
they're not
legitimate professional athlete territory.
So like that last month is just like hardcore. Like, it's, you know, I can't even imagine. I thinking the other day it came up as a memories saying like in a month's time I was about to do an Ironman, which is now. So I'm like, in a month's time I did an Ironman last year, and I just cannot get my head around the training that I had to do. But it was like, for me, it was more than the Ironman. It was so much more like mentally having to like, lift myself up and get myself out of that place and have a reason to get up every day. And then that reason became, like this Ironman, which was, this pretty big beast that, that it was. But it was all for like a deeper meaning type thing. Yeah.
And I think that you have to, for it to work the way that you're describing it, it has to be something gnarly. Yeah. It has to be fairly far out of your comfort zone. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they probably don't want to go as far out of their comfort zone as what it kind of takes to change when you're in a place like that. Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And there were days and, you just don't want to do it. Like I just had the shits and I'm like, I just do not want to, I don't want to be doing this. But then the bigger picture is there. And, even on the day of the actual race, like I had written on my hand, like a message about my dad. And there were times throughout the race when I was just feeling like I'm done. Like I couldn't possibly go a step further. And, you look, and it sounds really like cringy, but like, you look at that message and it just gives you that drive to like keep going. And an Ironman race is like a really emotional race. Like for lots of people, like you stand at the finish line and there's people bawling their eyes out because maybe it was a dream over 10 years and they've finally been able to do it, or like they've had significant trauma in their life, or, like big weight loss journey, or like, there's so many different reasons why people are doing an Ironman. And that feeling of crossing the line and they say, Riana Crehan, you are an Ironman. Like it's it's just this flood of emotions, and like it's such an incredible atmosphere. Like I encourage anyone, if they can, get to watch and witness like people completing a race like that, because it's just so hard to like actually describe what it's like. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine it. Was that probably the lowest that you've ever been in your life, like losing your dad and then losing the Supercars role, going through COVID as well? Yeah, 100%. Like that year, and look, it's because your dad would have been young, eh? Yeah, he would have been 60 this year. It would have been his 60th birthday this year in June. And like that year in 2020, like I know so many people had a tough year, so I always like struggle to put it in the right words, but for me, in your experience, in my like, it was fucked. Like I lost, like Will lost his drive because the team shut down, and then I was basically stood aside because COVID and restrictions and all that sort of stuff, and then Dad died in the July, and I was here and they're in Perth, obviously, and there was the challenges of quarantine and no flights to Perth. There literally wasn't any flights to Perth the weekend that he died, and being told, like when you're in the worst moment of your life and then being told you can't fly, interstate, it's like the rage inside of you is undescribable. And I have so much empathy for other people who went through that situation, and it was all over the news at the time. But and then like thankfully I was able to get to Perth, and so did you have to do 2-week quarantine? Well, we did home quarantine, so we were very, very lucky, and I was really lucky because I don't know how I got hold of this person that worked in the government, and we ended up getting on a flight, and Dad was in ICU, and it was it was not, we knew that the outcome was going to be, and I was on the flight, and my sister, she got Wi-Fi on the flight, and she called me and basically said he's not going to make it. And so I sort of said my goodbyes on a fucking Qantas flight. That's so gnarly. And that in itself was probably one of the worst moments of my life. And then we landed, and I got the message to say no, he was still still there. So this lady, I don't even know how it all worked. I honestly don't. I feel like that whole experience was just like a blur. But they allowed me to go to the hospital and go through like a back door, and he was obviously in ICU, and thankfully the doctor said, look, I'm just going to pretend you're not here, and he shut the curtains and allowed me and my mum and brother and sister all to basically say goodbye, and that's when and I had about 10 minutes before my dad died. And so I count myself lucky because I got that goodbye, and I know so many people
were in a similar experience, but I didn't get that. And then from there, we had to do a home quarantine for 2 weeks, which was rough because, you know, like we've just had this really traumatic experience, and then you're stuck in a house. But I mean, and lucky I was with my mum, but it was still just yuck. It was all pretty horrible, and then obviously we didn't want to have the funeral straight away because we wanted to be able to be out of quarantine. So it was just lots. There was just so many elements of things that were going against us at the time, and just made things harder, really. Yeah. And then even just after, when I stayed in Perth for, I think I was there for 5 weeks in the end. But even once I left, you know, the borders were shut, so I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get back, and like just that in itself was like torture because my family were really, really struggling. My mum, brother and sister were all in a really, really bad place, and just being told you can't go and see them is like, I don't know, I still struggle to wrap my head around how that all happened then. So it was just a really, really hard time, and I went through a lot of guilt with, I shouldn't feel as sad as my mum and brother and sister because I was not actually there. You know, they were there. Like they were there on the night that, you know, it all ultimately happened, but I was in Queensland, so therefore I shouldn't be. It shouldn't be as affected. Like I sort of struggled with things like this, and I felt like I had to really keep strong because my brother in particular went through a really bad time. So it was kind of like, you know, hold your shit together because
for other people
are struggling more, and you don't deserve to be as upset as them because, you know, it was worse for them type thing. And you know, long answer to your question, but yeah, that sort of few months at the end of that year was like 100% like the darkest time I've ever had in my life, and really was the first time where I've just didn't want to do anything, had no purpose, like could easily lie in bed all day and have no reason to get up because it was just like everything's just turned to shit, like no job, Will's career, my dad, like it was just, everything was just fucking going sideways. And so I was in a place where I was like, well, what the hell is it? You know, like I've got nothing, you know, I had good things, but in my head I had nothing. Yeah. And the Ironman training, like it literally saved me. And I know that's a big call, but it really did. Like it really did save me because it gave me purpose and it gave me structure in my day and it gave me something to work towards and
probably a lot of good time in your own head to process the emotions too, to be on the cycle bike for that long or running, and you kind of, because you're kind of going through pain. Yeah. Just by being on a bike for 6 to 8 hours, you're going through pain. So you're already in a familiar place of pain, and then you've got the pain of dealing with everything that you've kind of got to deal with. They probably went together quite well.
Yeah, and I think at the time you don't, because you're in it and you're living it, so it's hard to realize what's going on. But then looking back now, I'm like, exactly what you said. You know, I had those hours and hours and hours where it was just me and my head and going through things and pushing myself to a place, and like maybe sometimes a bad place, like pushing myself so I didn't have to, I didn't have to think about other things. But you know, that whole thing was just a big journey of like getting through really shit times and trying to navigate this new life that I had and my family had and what that now looks like. And, you know, and then I, to be honest, probably didn't give myself really the time to process it properly until like going on SAS. And I know that sounds lame, but you're in an experience where you're getting stripped to nothing, like your bare emotions are getting exposed, and then you're getting asked to basically question those emotions and those feelings and what you've done and those choices you've made. And I don't think you don't ever really do that. You don't sit down and go, all right, I'm going to like question every single thing that's just happened and why did it happen and all that sort of stuff. And that was a real like process for me of like actually allowing myself to get upset and allowing myself to sort of feel
that, the things that you gotta feel.
That I needed to sort of. And I think in grief, I don't know, people say like it gets easier as time goes on. I don't know if it does. I think that the moments you can navigate better, like for me, I don't think it's necessarily gotten easier. I just feel like I'm in a better place to handle. You
got more tools in the toolbox
to handle those you know times where, you know, I just want to have a cry or whatever.
The losing your job thing must have been pretty gnarly too, because anyone losing their job is gnarly, but I suppose, at the level of it being fairly public, and then obviously every decision that gets made in supercars or whatever is going to come with people then judging that decision, commenting on that decision, and then for the work that you put in to get there, it's probably the kind of, when that happened, it was probably something that you didn't feel you could get back, because you don't really see many people work and then they lose that position and then get it back.
Yeah, and it was a real kick in the guts. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was devastated, but at the same time I was realistic enough to say, like, I've had, I feel like I've had a good stint, like I've really given it my all. Like I don't think there's much more I could have done. And if people are making that decision, that's, they've got their reasons for making that decision. But it was just like, it felt like at the time, and I probably would have dealt with it better if it was, say, this year. But at the time I was just in such a vulnerable place. I was just like, I couldn't get my head around like everything that was going on, and I was just sad because I loved the job and I loved the people, and I was really sad to have to step away. But at the same sense, like I had like the overwhelming fan response on my socials and on like forums and stuff in a positive sense was like hard to put into words. Like it really was. And the people that sent me incredible messages and of support was like, I suppose when you're in it, and you're probably the same, like people don't always say nice things. Like if people are going to say stuff, they normally say like shit things. So you don't really hear that sort of stuff all the time. And then all of a sudden to hear it, you're like, oh, okay, wow, people actually did like what I did, like people thought that I was good at what I did. And but so that was a nice part of what was a kind of shitty time. And then
it's a pretty cool story really when you look at it now, to have everything that you had go on, then you end up getting your job back, and then to complete the triathlon the way that you did. I mean, it's a pretty crazy story of kind of like losing everything and then but getting a lot back on the backside of it.
Yeah, and like it was, I suppose at the time it was hard to feel sorry for myself, and Will was the same. Like he and I had the same feeling. Like you don't want to feel sorry for yourself because so many people were in a worse off experience than us, but it's all still relative to your life. So relative. And he lost his drive, which was like absolutely devastating because we thought that maybe that was it. He was never going to get an opportunity to drive ever again. And then for me to lose my job, and like we still had a house and we were healthy, but it still hurts. Like it doesn't take the hurt away anymore. And we said to each other, like, we don't want people to feel sorry for us. Like we're okay, but it doesn't mean that we're not sad about what's happened, for our both of our professional careers. But and then you go, okay, the world works in fucked up ways. Like here we are now in 2022, and he's in a team where like it's strength to strength, and like I'm back working in a job that I love, and he's just won a race, and we're like, man, think about where we were 2 years ago. Like we were both pretty fucked. Like like we were both really sad, and our life was really shit. Like. And now 2 years later, like we're in a place where like, look, it's so good. Like I'm so grateful that we've been able to get back to this place, and like it certainly don't take any of it for granted.
Yeah, can you enjoy it more now, in a sense, because you know what it's like to have it completely ripped away?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're
not
more,
like you would have taken it for granted before, but
I think you're just more aware, and like particularly for him, like you're more aware of. No one's invincible, and and no one's safe, and things can happen like what happened with him. It was totally out of his control. It was absolutely nothing to do with him. It was just circumstantial, and I suppose you get so caught up in everything that it is like important to go, okay, wow, like this is like, think of the 2 years that we've just had, and we've had the highest of highs. Like we got married. Then the next thing in our life was dad dying. Like it was just like we had this crazy roller coaster of good things and bad things happen, and then now we're in a place where like it's a nice place to be.
And then I think too, whenever you do go through the hardest time in your life, it automatically kind of makes the next thing not as hard to deal with.
Yeah,
because you've got that experience to draw from. And then I think that kind of goes back to the sport thing, like just training every day. When you're doing, well, for me, jiu-jitsu at night is the hardest thing I have to do in a day. There's at no point in the day is my heart rate that high. Am I working that hard? Am I holding on to something that, that's the hardest thing. And I think that when you've got something that's so hard to get through on a daily basis, it kind of makes everything else a little bit easier. And then from a more zoomed out perspective, when you've got this event in your life that feels like rock bottom, it just sort of makes the other things, the other challenges coming at you in the future a lot easier to deal with, because you've got this reference point of like, oh, well, this is how low this was. And I mean, losing a parent is about as low as it gets. You go, I grew from this. Yeah. Positives did come out of it. Yeah. Because I bet crossing that Ironman finish line was it one of those emotional experiences?
Yeah. Massively. And I was like bawling my eyes out, and I made Will go and find, because my dad used to drink VB, so I made Will go and find a VB, and I honestly have no idea where he found it from, but as I crossed the line and like I sculled a VB, because it was like, that's like, that was for Dad. And yeah, like I was just it was so many mixed emotions of like, relief, like elation, like sadness and everything else. And I think I'll always have those moments, like even on the weekend when Will won, it's like, God, I wish Dad could have seen this. Or like, for SAS, it's like, oh my God, like Dad, if he could have, like, he would have been watching every episode and been telling his mates, like to make sure they watch it. And I think that will happen my whole entire life.
Yeah.
But I definitely think as a person, I've learned so much. Like firstly, our family is like closer than it ever was before. I feel like I have so much more appreciation for experiences and life and like little things, like, and it's like taking photos of even if it's just a family dinner, like take a photo, like, because you just learn that, as we did, like that, and it's your whole life's change in literally seconds, and that I've taken so much from that in what I now and how I live my life now. And that was one of the other things. It's like I cannot say no. Like if you ask me to do something, I'm doing it. I'll work out how to do it later, but like I'm doing it, because that's one thing I have learned. Like it's just like shit could turn pear-shaped so quickly, and like you got to do the things and experience it, and like live life hard
while you can.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. I don't know what made me think about it. I was thinking about it the other day, that we're oddly disconnected from death on a day-to-day experience for especially in the Western culture, like in, let's just say, Australia. But I think that you're right. There's so much knowledge in death, and there's so much wisdom that you can find on how to live in death itself. And if death it sounds morbid and weird, but if it's at the forefront of your mind, that you will die, and it will stop, and your experiences will stop, and your interactions with the people that you love will stop. And there is that point for everybody, because we're so like, I think maybe it was my grandma, she passed away a few years ago, and I think it was her anniversary recently. And it's weird because you go to the hospital and then they die, and they're not there anymore. It's real obvious for you to see that they're gone, and then that's all you see of it. That's it. And then they go on a truck, and then they go to the morgue, and then they get put in a coffin, and they're like, then you have the funeral and the box is closed, and like the experience that you have with death feels very distant, even when it's like right there in your life. And I think it really fucks people up in a massive way, because you're oblivious to it. There's no contact with it in your daily life, and then you'll have a parent, or you'll have a grandparent, or someone will die, and it's this like sudden event, and then it happens, and then you've got no connection to it anymore, and then you've just got your emotions to kind of like deal with. But if you think go back a few hundred years ago, if your grandparent dies, or one of your parents dies, or your kid dies, you've got to deal with it. Yeah. And it's really, you've got to like bury the person. It's a much more like real experience, if that makes sense. And I think that in our society nowadays, so many people, we're all just so disconnected from it, and it almost makes it so much harder to deal with when it happens. Yeah. And then you almost live a weird life where you don't ever think that you're going to die, or someone that you love is going to die. But like you said, it's really profound when you experience it, and it can actually change the way you live.
Yeah. And And I don't even necessarily think it's like you have to lose a person that's close to you. Like it might be just a traumatic event or like an experience where it almost like stops you in your tracks, and it's like, okay, I need to take things in a different direction, or I need to handle situations better, and I'm not one that I don't like to have regrets, and I think that each experience has value for how you continue to live your life. And there's things that I go, oh God, why did I do that? But I don't feel like I regret it, because I feel like you need everything to make you make you to who you are, and then obviously going forward. But it's certainly something in this last couple of years where I genuinely know that I've changed as a person, and I look at things differently. And I always was someone who was pretty like fearless, like I just would do things without thinking about consequences, and I've kind of lived my life like that forever. But now even more so, it's kind of like, well, what are you afraid of, or what are you scared of, or like, are you afraid you're going to fail, or are you afraid you're going to look like an idiot, or like, are you afraid you're not going to get to the end, like, with an Ironman or something like that? Like, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen, apart from the fact that you get an experience from that, whatever it may be? And that looks different to everyone. That might be doing a marathon, that could be doing a jiu-jitsu competition, it might be writing a book, or it might be like starting a YouTube channel, like whatever it may be. Like, it's different for everyone. But being in a place where you're like not afraid to like have an experience that's gonna, you're gonna learn something from.
I think there's a good saying in jiu-jitsu: you either win or you learn. And I think that's a kind of a way to frame what you're saying, is that you are, at the end of the day, you're going to have a experience that's going to kind of push you forward in some sense, whether it might be classically negative or classically positive. That still is, I guess, like net positive at the end of the day. Yeah,
correct. And like, I think like the DS on SAS, that was a lot of what they spoke about. Like, nothing was a failure. Like, even though from a TV sort of show it looked like you either pass or you fail, but it wasn't like, to get to the end of the show, it wasn't about passing every single thing perfectly. It was like how you handled each experience and what you brought to the next experience from that, previous like challenge or whatever. It wasn't a sense of like, oh, okay, in order to get to the end of the show, you have to pass with, 100% in every single challenge, and then you'll get to the end and then you'll be a winner. Like, it wasn't, that's not how the show sort of built. And that was a lot that we focused on in that situation, was like, okay, well, I've totally fucked that up, but what did I learn in that experience that I'm now going to take to the next challenge? How was that whole experience? How did it come about? Just like my manager called me and said, like, I've got this show, how do you feel about it? And straight away I was like, yep, I'm in. And then a bit later he's like, okay, yep, you're in. Like, you've got a spot. And I told Will, and Will was just like, what the hell? Like, that is the stupidest thing ever. But I mean, for me, it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Really? Like, and I have absolutely zero regrets on going on the show, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and so probably ever will. Triathlon? Yeah, 100 times harder, because it's like, you're doing these challenges which are so far out of your comfort zone. Like, I don't see why you would do them ever in life. Like, you're never going to be doing half of the shit we did. Yeah. But it's all the other things, like, you basically would sleep 3 or 4 hours a night. You were eating like very, very minimal food. You had no creature comforts, like, your bed's not necessarily comfy, and like you got no hot water, like you don't have a shower, like, you go into the toilet and people can see you going in the toilet and it's just a hole in the ground, and you've got one pair of clothes that you wear for 2 weeks, and the only way to dry clothes if they're wet is like standing in front of a fire to dry them, and so it's all that stuff that makes it so difficult and so challenging. Because if you just did the challenges, like jump out of a helicopter, oh yeah, that's that's cool, or like do this, oh yeah, that's cool, it's kind of hard but it's cool, but it's like you're doing that on no sleep, no food, like mentally just getting smashed, and and like just none of those, like even just little things like deodorant or like a Band-Aid, or like just all that Panadol, like, I mean, how, if you've got a headache, you go grab a Panadol. Like, we had headaches, like it's too bad, like drink more water, like that's kind of the attitude that we had. So that's why it's so hard. So what's the format of it? Because like I said, I don't have a TV. It's probably the one reality show that I would watch though, because it seems like it's quite real. Yeah, it is as real as you can possibly get. Like, I mean,
there's obviously stuff that they're setting up for TV and then it's produced and edited.
Well, it's once the show starts, it starts, and there's no stopping until the last day. So there's no interruption by a producer or a director or anything like that. You don't reshoot anything. When you're in camp, the cameras are basically all like hidden in the walls and on sensors, so you don't feel like you're getting filmed, like that's. And then when we're out on location, there was probably 3 cameramen on location with us, but there's no interaction with the crew at all. Like you couldn't speak to them, they couldn't speak to you. So it was as real, the experience was as real as you possibly can get. And if we wanted to see a doctor, you had to ask permission and they would decide whether you needed a doctor or not. Like I broke my finger and my finger was like massive and black, and I said, can I see him? And he's like, well, what do you want us to do? Put some tape on it, like get back out there. So it's pretty hardcore in that sense.
So how does it work? You get there and then you're just going through like SAS training in the way that anyone would? Like, is that the premise of the show?
Yeah, I mean, it's like loosely based around how you are in SAS selection. So, we arrive and they have these things called beastings, which are basically like a workout that goes for probably 40 to 50 minutes of like, squats or like leopard crawls or like, carrying like sandbags and things like that. So they drop them in at any time. And then on camp, they can basically come in at any time to take us out to do a challenge. And we basically would do so lights would come on in camp at 6 a.m. from memory. And it was there was no light in the camp. Like it was like a dark room like this. And it was just obviously lights. And then they'd go out at night at maybe 11 o'clock at night. And then at any time throughout the night, the DS would come charging in and like would take us out to do a challenge or a beasting. But basically a day would be lights come on, you get dressed, have breakfast, and then you'd go out on a challenge, and that would take a couple of hours. Then you come back, have a little bit of lunch, then another challenge, come back, have dinner, and then either go to bed or be like up throughout the night doing various different things. So, but you never knew what was coming and you had no idea of the schedule. So your brain is constantly thinking any minute now.
Anxiety mode, yeah.
Any minute now they're going to charge through the door. Or any minute now we're going to have to do a challenge, or sitting in a car and they black out the windows in the car so you never knew where you were going. And we could be sitting in the car for 5 minutes or 4 hours and you never know. And so if you're sitting in the car for 4 hours, like the whole time you're like, are we stopping yet? Are we stopping yet? Are you like, do you reckon it's now? Or do you reckon we're close? And that mental like anxiety is just like burning energy the whole time. Then that's basically 14 days of just feeling like any minute now someone's going to fuck us up.
That's so gnarly. Did you find yourself getting better at it as the 2 weeks went on?
And like you really have to surrender to the course and surrender to the process. And the people that got really mentally distraught were the ones that couldn't let that go, and that was quite interesting in itself, because a lot of the other contestants were like former athletes and professional athletes, and so for them it's really an unknown.
They used to being in control.
Yeah, and it's such an unknown process to have someone like be surprised as to when you're going to have to perform type thing. So that's quite an interesting thing just to see how people deal with just that side of it. And like, after a couple of days I'm like, look, I can't be bothered trying to work out what's going on. You just got to let yourself go, and what will be, and you're either going to get through it or you're not going to get through it, and that's just how it is, and the people that could get to that headspace quicker were the people that did better in the end.
So you could see that. You
could
see
100%.
The changes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and some people even right to the last couple of days still couldn't let that go. Which is just like so draining, like mentally draining and draining for everyone, because the conversations in camp would be like, what do you think's going to happen next? Or like, okay, do you think we haven't done this yet? So that surely it has to be that. And then it's just like, stop talking, just stop trying to work out what's going to happen, just let it happen.
Did you surprise yourself through it?
Oh yeah, massively. Yeah. Like, I mean, I went in thinking if I could get like the first week done, I would be really happy with that. And that's kind of the only place I didn't really think anything further than that. I just was like, okay, let's just get through week 1, and then you'll be proud and you'll be happy, and you've sort of ticked that box. And then, you know, day after day, it was like, okay, I'm still here. I still sort of feel like I'm okay. And I'm still getting through okay. Like I'm sort of sitting okay within the rest of the group. And then I got to a point where I'm like, well, you can't quit now. Like, you know, at first you're kind of like, oh my God, we've got so long to go. And then you kind of get over that hump and then like, well, nah, you can't quit. Like,
didn't come this far.
Yeah, like exactly. So, and then that becomes your thing that you're hanging on to is like, well, you've got this far, like you can't quit now. And yeah, like every day I expected to be, because you can either voluntary withdraw, which is you leaving, or the staff can get rid of you because they feel like you're not keeping up or whatever. So, I mean, every day I was just like, well, they haven't got rid of me yet, you know, and in my head, I got to a point where I was like, well, I'm not quitting. Like, there's just no way I'm quitting. Like, they'll have to get rid of me. And I suppose that's what carried me through.
That's so sick. It must have been a pretty crazy, cool experience to go through.
Yeah. And like, it wasn't, I mean, obviously what we got to do was cool, but like, I just loved, like, you're in this such a weird situation where you're in a room of 17, you know, adults who have come from all different walks of life and been through so many cool things in their life. Like we had Jeff Hugel, we had Wayne Carey, like Barry Hall.
Philippoussis was in there, wasn't he?
No, he was on a previous one. Season. Yeah. Darius Boyd. Like we had so many people who were like top of their game, like particularly athletes, you know, and to be in that environment and see how they work and see how they handle pressure. And then I sort of sat back. I'm like, well, obviously that's why he's got gold medals, or like obviously that's why he was the captain of, you know, the Broncos. And like you kind of, you know, you sort of really understand why these people have had so much success in their life because of the way they were, you know, having the experience and what they knew and their knowledge and what they were putting to the camp and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so cool. So it was literally a room that you stayed in, like a big
like a I don't know what the building was. I'm assuming it was like a rundown, I don't know, warehouse or something in the middle of like Wollongong Way. That was basically just, like a shit heap, really. Like,
and so what, you just slept on camp stretcher type deal?
Yeah, camp stretchers. And we just had a fireplace, obviously, to keep us warm. So did you have to maintain the fire yourself, do all your own firewood, the whole deal? So we had to cut our firewood, had to maintain the fires, and that was all part of the camp, was like, you can never let the fire go out. You've got to maintain that all throughout, all day, all night. You know, like even like throughout in the middle of the night, you'd have to, like, someone, like, you'd open your eye and you'd be like, oh, the fires have gone out, like get up in the middle of the night and start, you know, doing a fire. And so it's pretty like rugged and raw. So what did you do to prepare for it? You're already doing the triathlon stuff, so physically you probably felt I had
right.
that kind of like cardio fitness, which I knew I'd be okay with, but it was a more...
You're not really making fires daily though.
No. But I got a strongman coach up in Brisbane, and he basically, like, I had two sessions a week with him for probably 5 weeks. And
is that how much notice you had that you were doing it?
I think I had 6 weeks, I reckon I had notice. And he basically was like, you just need to lift shit, like just lift heavy, awkward, weird stuff. And basically that's what we did for an hour twice a week, was just lifting, like, and I got up to like 60, 70 kilo sandbags and holding like stuff out in front of you like that, and like farmers carries and like flipping tires and just stuff that, I mean, I wouldn't normally do that in training, but it's like stuff that I knew that we need
fairly functional.
Yeah, need to get. And then running with a pack. So basically from the minute I got told I was going to be in the show, I got an army pack and built up to it. I didn't go straight to the 20 kilos, but like built up, and then would just go walking and running through like the forest and around the house. Like every day for 6 weeks, I wore a weight vest around the house.
That's sick.
Just to like get used to like having that pack on you, and because that's really the thing that you do, all you ever do is run with your pack, and it's 20 kilos. So that in the show you have to do that as well. Yeah, so I knew that you just needed to get comfortable with having that extra weight on and that awkwardness when you're running. And so I tried to think about things that we may do. Grip strength was another thing, like, so just hanging off like a bar for as long as I could, like monkey bars. yeah, like I literally would go to the park and there'd be kids playing and I'm like, can I just use the monkey bars for a second? So yeah, that was the kind of stuff that I practiced. But in terms of all that other stuff, like lighting fires and learning bits and pieces like that, we kind of just all worked it out in camp, and the people who were the best at it kind of did it, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, could you see leadership emerging and people that had the good leadership? Was it I'm sure psychologically it was very interesting to see how people's minds worked in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. And lots of like the first couple of days is obviously a real
feeling out process.
Feeling out process. And plus like the people with the really strong personalities or the really confident personalities were the ones that, you know, are sort of the alpha personality types. And I went in like not like that at all. Like I was very intimidated. I was like, you know, no one's going to even know who I am, and so I'm certainly not going to like upset the apple cart at all in the first couple of days. But yeah, it was like straight away you had these particular types of people who sort of, you know, went to the front and led through voice as well as, you know, through like what they did. But
were they the people that were consistently the leaders, or were those people the ones that first to kind of go?
I think, yeah, there was a bit of both. And then as the sort of days go on, you sort of work out like Darius, for example, like certainly not a vocal leader, like, but leader in his presence and in what he did in the camp. And like, even if there was a tense situation, like he was a very quiet voice, but it was a voice that was like you'd listen to, if that makes sense. And so he was very much a different kind of person, like from a leader point of view, because he was much quieter and probably less obvious, but what he said was like you'd listen to it type thing. So yeah, it was interesting to see how the different personalities like evolve as the days go on, and then the more tired you get, the more hungry you get, the more annoyed you get, the more upset you get. Like then again, like it's personalities, like who can handle that kind of pressure, you know, and who just like it just blows up.
It'd be pretty cool to I guess see how you responded to that as well, because there'd be a fair bit of learning that you do about yourself, and then to I guess see who, if the person that's making the most noise can also back it up with actions and who's doing what, and it would be very interesting to watch it play out. Yeah,
it was interesting for me because, like as I said, I went in pretty quiet, and which is quite normal for me. Like if I'm in an environment where I don't really know the people or the situation, I'm quite quiet. But then if I'm comfortable, like I'm then the loud person. And I think that's really how it played out for me on the show, was like the first few episodes, like you didn't even really see me, but I was kind of just like working away in the background. And then as I got more confidence for myself at the fact that I felt like I deserved to be there. Yeah. And then, you know, you grow more confidence within the group. So then, and you sort of saw that evolve. And then like halfway through the show, I had a huge blow up with one of the other recruits. And it was kind of funny because everyone was like, whoa, where did that come from? But for me,
what was that over? What happened there?
He was, so one of the other recruits Paul Fennick, who you might know, he does like Fat Pizza, like, you know, that TV show Fat Pizza.
Paulie.
Paulie. Yeah. So he was sort of doing things that were kind of sabotaging our group, which led to us getting like punished. So we would have to do more work. Yeah. And one, like it kind of just got to a point where I'd had enough, and like we just got smashed, and he'd done something and I just blew up at him, and we had a fairly like heated exchange, which was pretty funny. But it was like me as a person as well, like growing in myself and growing in confidence and like feeling like I deserved to be there, and was like when I went in, I really didn't think I deserved to be there. I was like, I'm not a celebrity, I'm not a famous athlete, you know, why am I here? But then you sort of that sort of came to me as I was going on. Yeah, that would have been a cool thing to go through, just that whole learning process. Yeah. What was the hardest physical challenge that because you got hurt, didn't you? Yeah. Or did you get hurt before you went on the show, or something happened? No, I got hurt. Yeah, no, in the show, like I didn't know at the time, but when I finished the show, and I thought I had a really sore back, and it wasn't healing, so I went and got a scan, and I had 5 cracked ribs. So I was like, well, that's why my back hurts. And I broke my finger. So yeah, I got pretty smashed on the show. In terms of the hardest thing, towards the end, so it was like the second last day, we had to basically go through a swamp tethered to each other. So like we had a rope between us and there was 5 of us left. And the person that fell, basically they'd be out. That would be their last chance. So you had to run through like knee-deep swampland for, I think we were running for an hour, holding a 20 kilo package that we had to get to a certain sort of drop point. And running itself is hard. Like it's hard running in a swamp. That's really hard. But then the fact that you were tethered to everyone else and you had the pressure of not being able to, like you couldn't fall or like drop behind because that was it, you were gone. And that was probably the closest I came to like thinking I'm done. Like I actually don't think I can do it anymore because it was just so physically, like we were vomiting at the end. Like it was, it was just so physically at the end of like, pushing my body to the, as far as it could possibly go.
Yeah, it's crazy experience. Yeah. It's super intriguing to go through that and to know that it's gonna be public. I remember seeing some images come from, maybe like you post them and it's like you got snot coming out your nose and it's like you just look like shit. And it's like, well, makes sense. This is fucking real.
Yeah, and it is funny like to have those first couple of days and you kind of think, oh God, what do we look like?
What do we look like?
But then towards the end, that is so far from your mind. Like you're so deep into what you're doing and focused on what you need to do. Like the looks thing is like gone, like literally gone. And then, obviously watching it back, I'm like, oh God. And you can see us change. Like you can see from day one to like the last day, like just how haggard we are and like the bags under our eyes and like we all lost weight and it's pretty funny to see it.
Was the camaraderie, I'm sure there's people that you're really close with now as a result of going through it.
Yeah, and it's so weird. And I used to think like, people who were in reality TV shows and they come out like, oh, we're best friends. And I'm like, how? You've known each other for 2 minutes. But like, it's so weird. It's such a different experience because it's so intense. You're living with these people 24 hours a day, sleeping next to each other, and like you form such a tight bond like so quickly. It's really, really strange. And we were a really, really tight group. Like we were all very supportive of each other, and we've got like a group WhatsApp that we still like keep in touch, and that's been really cool as well, like having those friendships.
Well, I think that's probably something we didn't mention when we were talking about the sporting side of things. I know for me, in 5 years, I got some of the boys that I train with are like, they're my boys. And it's a relationship that I've got with them that's the same as people that I've been friends with for 10, 15 years. Because you're doing something together that's so hard. I know how hard it is for me to show up to jiu-jitsu every night. And then when you've got a guy that's there, that's coaching and he's done it for 10 years and he's 28 with a black belt. And is just a fucking animal. The respect that you've got for that person and the fact that you can go to war with each other. We're sparring 100%, fucking each other up. And then the respect that you can have for each other after. There's these weird circumstances when you're doing a sport that's quite challenging that can create these crazy bonds with people. And you'd feel it the same when you were training for the Ironman. And I think that's another thing that people probably don't think about when they just give up sport at the end of school, and then you do your 20s or whatever, and you that completely goes out the window. You might go to the gym because you want to look hot for chicks or whatever, but in terms of like doing a sport, being in a club, having people that rely on you, relying on other people, it can just form these crazy relationships and I think a lot of people are kind of starved of those relationships in their adult life. And
I think it is a weird thing, like making friends when you're older. It's such a weird, it's so strange. But I agree with you. From the running group that we're in and from doing the triathlon stuff, like we have formed like these really amazing bonds with these people and lifelong friendships. And it's such a strange thing as an adult to like have a new person come into your life that you feel like
you can really trust.
And like you've known them forever type thing. But I suppose that like you said, it's the beauty of being in an environment like that, and you want to be in that environment. Like you're choosing as an adult to do this. Maybe as a kid you're like, your mum said you got to do swimming, so you're doing swimming or whatever it is. But I think that's such a cool thing, and I'm like you. I hope and wish that more people had that experience and had something that they felt really passionately about, and whether that be jiu-jitsu, running, cycling, motocross, like whatever that may be, like something that you really love, that you say, I'm going to give myself an hour a week, or I'm going to give myself 4 hours a week, or whatever it is, to have that, because that makes me a better person.
Yeah, and I think that learning how to learn is massive as well. I mean, I'm a nerd. Like, I'm a very nerdy person. So to me, I guess that hasn't been a problem in my life. But it's one of the things that I see in either people now that start jiu-jitsu that are coming in, and I'm like working with them as someone that's been there for a lot longer. I'm like, man, you got to understand, you don't know how to learn because you left school fucking 20 years ago and you're just randomly doing this thing. Like, you learn in your everyday life, but it's in a way slower and less focused way. Whereas I think when you're doing a triathlon or like jiu-jitsu, it's very intense. You can really learn how to do this new skill. You're trying to develop this new thing. Yeah. And then you don't know what you don't know. So how do you get this information from a place of not knowing anything about it? You've got to learn how to learn about the thing. And I think that fully carries over into your life when you have a challenge at work, or, whatever it is, relationships wise. I find myself always dipping back into the well of things that I've learned in these kind of disciplines.
Yeah. I mean, it's all just life experience, isn't it? Like, giving yourself these different opportunities to grow from, and hopefully it's always for the better. Sometimes maybe it's not, and then you've got to redirect and do something else.
Yeah, but I get people all the time message me being, oh man, you got such a great group of friends. I wish I had what you had with your mates, because people, I guess, see what we're doing, and I'm just like, man, do shit. Go do a sport. Go join a club.
Yeah.
If you be a part of something where, if you like motocross, go and join the local club and, be on the committee. There's going to be one or two people there that just fully get you because they've taken time out of their life to go do the same thing as you. There's this common ground that you've got. And, a lot of people do struggle to find friends as they get older. And, I even say to my mum moved down from Brizzy, and she's like, oh, I just don't have the friends. I'm like, go to join a yoga group, or do Pilates every single week. You're gonna find people that have that common interest, and it creates that relationship so quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree.
When you watched the show and when it come out, what was the experience like of, I guess, seeing it and then having new people that haven't seen you before? Was it a crazy experience to be like a reality show person?
Yeah, definitely. It was, I suppose, for me, because I was in the first few episodes of the show, I was very quiet, so you didn't really see me much. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like I was like, oh, she's arrived and now she's part of the show. But as it was unfolding, it is a weird experience to be like, okay, that's me on that show, and I did that, and then watching it real time, like the fans are watching it as I'm watching it type thing, and then have people message you, and and for the most part, it was all really positive stuff. It was all really nice, like congratulations, and like, you did so well, and all that sort of stuff. So I was in a, it was in a good place. Like, there was a few other people that didn't get, I suppose, like they didn't come across as they may have liked or maybe should have. So then, like, you have a totally different experience, and you don't really know what that's going to be like until
because that's kind of the weird thing is that you go do this thing and you don't know how you're going to be perceived in that.
Because it's still a TV show. I mean, as real as it can be, they still have to edit, like, where they're filming 24 hours a day. They've still got to stick that into like an hour, so there still has to be some sort of edit process, and for TV to be successful, you always need to have kind of you've kind of got to have a bit of a villain and a bit of a good guy, and like, all that sort of stuff. So and you don't really know how you're gonna be, portrayed, or what you're gonna look like, from an outsider's point of view, and you're so in it, and you're not thinking about like, oh God, if I said that, maybe people, you're not thinking like that. So it still was a bit like, okay, God, what are we going to see tonight type thing. And then the episode would finish. I'm like, okay, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, that wasn't bad.
And then like, I'd be like, oh God, I remember this day. Like I was, I had the shits on, or I was like, angry with someone. And then you sort of watch the episode and you're thinking, oh God, like what's going to happen now? And, that's sort of how it kind of went on for the couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky I felt like what was shown of me was true to my character and true to myself, and I didn't feel like at any point I was, you know, portrayed differently than what I would normally be in a everyday situation. So I came out of the show being very grateful that what people saw was genuinely what happened and was genuinely me.
Yeah, because it can definitely go the other way.
Yeah.
so easily.
Yeah, exactly. But I think anyone who's going onto a reality TV show these days, you have to be pretty silly and pretty naive to think that, you know, it could be any different. Like I think in this day and age, we all know, we all have social media, like everyone understands that a reality TV show is very much a drama. You know, it's like heightened drama of whatever has happened, and it can be skewed in any way, and you have to be prepared for that to be good or really bad. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the things, because I think that to look at a reality TV show, from what I know of the reality TV shows that exist, that probably is the one that you'd want to go on. It seems like it's the most kind of real.
Yeah. Well, it's not.
You're not going on Love Island.
No.
Like, there's a certain group of shows that you're not going to qualify for.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think like of the shows that are on at the moment, this one, you know, I think is the most real, and it gives people an opportunity to really know you for who you are, and you're put in these, you know, really tough positions where you're vulnerable, and people, you know, see your true character. You're not going on a show like because you're going to be forced to date someone, or you'll be forced to break up with someone, or you're like fighting 300 girls for one bloke's, you know, affection type thing. Like it's kind of like,
that's a weird show.
Yeah.
That's a weird show.
SAS is kind of a show for you. Like you're not doing it for anyone else but you know what I mean? So I feel like that's why people probably,
How did chicks get, let's take a sidetrack here. How did chicks get so into watching a guy cheat on all of these girls, essentially? Like the whole Bachelor thing, that's about as far away from what's accepted by women in real life that you could ever get, and that's the biggest show. And you're like,
people love it.
Wait, why does this dude get a free pass to just cheat on every single chick, and it's completely fine, and all the girls still want him? I don't understand how that works.
I just think TV, like I think people watch TV because they want to escape
reality,
real life. So then they watch these things that are so far from real life, and they can't stop watching it. Like it's like all of those shows, you know, that it's so far from being real. Like no one, I mean, I'd hope no one behaves like that in real life, and then you're just kind of watching it because it's like, I've had a bad day at work, or I've been stuck behind my laptop for 12 hours and I just want to watch something where I literally don't have to use a brain.
Yeah. But I think that is the cool thing, I think, about the SAS show, is that you can actually make a show that has real drama. You don't have to.
It's not manufactured.
Have to fabricate it in that sense, because it is so raw and so real.
Yeah, and I think that's the success of the show is exactly what you just said. It is you're not creating something out of nothing. You're not like having to loosely script what people are saying. Like the drama is what's happening, and it's people's lives and livelihood and their stories. You know, everyone's sort of on that show, they all kind of have a story that they've experienced, you know, like whether that be, you know, like my story with my dad, or whether it be, you know, Darius with his family situation, or, you know, like lots of different. It's kind of just like, okay, what you've gone through in your life that's led you to this point and to your success kind of thing. And you know, unpacking that, I suppose, is kind of what this show does.
And it does give value to people.
Yeah.
To watch people go through these struggles. And I think to humanize a guy like Darius Boyd, who is just a superstar. Yeah. You watch his highlight reel of his career, just like, Jesus Christ, what an animal.
Yeah.
And then for the everyday person on the couch at 7:30 or whatever, to see that guy dealing with anxiety.
Exactly.
You know
and
what
you know, other people in life have had to deal with, like it's growing up in a dysfunctional home, or like, you know, not having a parent in your life, or like you said, then you're having anxiety and having depression and going, like, it's like these are all very normal things and very common things that people have gone through. But he's also gone through them and then, you know, gone on to have this career. Like it's really like, I find all that sort of stuff really interesting, that people have had these roller coaster lives and then that's led them to where they are, or that's been detrimental for them to get to,
or they've
whatever.
pushed through it. And still, I think that was probably one of the coolest things that came out of the Casey podcast, is him talking about the level of anxiety that he had to be a 2-time MotoGP world champion. And
I think we probably speak about it a lot more nowadays. But I think, for so many years, like, that wasn't really spoken about at all. And like, I mean, just about every athlete I've ever spoken to or had some kind of involvement with has dealt with those very things, and like gone through periods of anxiety or depression, or like, fear and, all that sort of stuff. But it's all life things, but they just happen to be doing it whilst they're an elite athlete.
And you're right, that narrative now is starting to change, because I grew up in the era of you had to be talented. And then if you didn't have the natural talent, then you weren't going to succeed. I spent my childhood believing that I could not even, like, that there was no point even chasing a career in sport or whatever it was. And I've played sport my entire life, but told myself, you're not naturally talented. If you're not good at 11, then you're not going to be the best in the world. And then the guys that are the best in the world, they don't have any problems. They don't have any...
It's all easy.
Yeah, they're just there because they're the best and they take it in their stride. And that's an enjoyable life to have, because you get there, you're so good at it, it comes so easy to you, you get paid lots of money, and then you retire and you're happy. And that's just not the truth. And I think there's a lot of kids now that are going to grow up knowing that you don't have to be the most talented kid to win a V8 Supercars Championship. You can have anxiety about performance and you can be scared of every single turn that you do and still win MotoGP World Championships. And I think that narrative, I guess we can talk about, like the downsides of social media and stuff, but that is a massive plus that's come from, I guess, the new way that we can tell these stories is that the kids aren't going to grow up with that same mentality that I had. They're going to grow up knowing that you can still be all these things in spite of all these other things.
And I think it's crazy to think, like, in, not so much in hindsight, but in this era that we're living, it's crazy to think that there was a period of time where you couldn't speak about anxiety or depression. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just insane to think that we came from a place where that wasn't really spoken about, and like, you just assumed that these people that had so much success lived a pretty, like, their lives was just like that, and I think it's good that we're in this place now where it's acceptable and it should be encouraged to talk about your challenges and how you deal with them and how you navigate through tricky parts of life. And that all, like, as I said before, all those things, like, they lead to the person you are and what you've done in your life. And I'm glad we're now in a place where, particularly athletes or particularly people who are public, people, that's sort of not going to be, like, frowned upon or, like, considered like a negative part of their life.
Well, that's a pretty good spot to leave it. That's bang on 3 hours, and that's
a lot of talking.
That's probably a great ending quote for this. So thank you so much for coming on. I've enjoyed it. That time went by extremely quickly. There was a lot.
That's good. If you're saying, God, I feel like I've been sitting here for hours.
Nah, well, we could definitely keep going, but I'm like, nah, we'll do our 3 hours and do another one of these at some point.
Yep.
I've enjoyed it. It went by super quick.
Yeah,
You're a very cool person. You do a lot of cool.
Thanks, mate.
You do a lot of really cool stuff, and you really seem to take it in your stride. And I'm sure, I guess it's not an element we even spoke about, but I'm sure there was a lot of, like, young girls that watch what you do in V8 Supercars. They watch what you do on social media, and then they watch what you did on the SAS show. And there's probably a lot of really cute little blonde girls out there that have got maybe a bit more of an open mind to some of the things that they can aim for in their life. Yeah,
I hope so. Like I said, I don't have intentions. I don't lay out my life going, I'm going to do this because I want a result. It's like, let's just keep rolling and see what happens, and we'll see what it looks like in another 5 years or another 10 years.
Have you got what's on for the rest of this year goals wise? Have you got any crazy stuff coming up?
No, I had penciled in to do a marathon, which I've never done a marathon outside of an Ironman.
Kind of.
But I'd penciled in to do one this year, but it's like, yeah, it's not going to happen. I probably didn't give myself enough credit for what I did last year and all the physical and mental exhaustion that I went through, and then the injuries and stuff. So I think I'm just going to be kind to myself this year. And if something pops up, I'll do it, but I'm not going to like put pressure on myself to do something, and then we'll go again in 23.
Savage. You're an animal. You're an animal. I love it.
Thanks, mate.
Well, appreciate you coming on the show.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
No worries. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.